Chapter 4502. In the South Continent Sea, where even a profound ascending stage master could do whatever he wanted, there was actually a mountain opening stage master. At this moment, everyone was so shocked that they could not even close their mouths. Everyone was shocked speechless, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. This was not the East Continent College's disciple selection. Why did such an invincible existence suddenly appear in an instant? The people who did not dare to move did not even dare to breathe. They all looked at each other and did not dare to make a sound. Don't look at how many masters were gathered here. Once they attacked together, even a mysterious ascending stage master might not be able to handle it. But now the opponent was a mountain opening stage giant. This kind of unrealistic idea was better to quickly put an end to it. If they were to really fight, even if they all attacked together, it would not be enough to kill them. Mountain opening stage evil cultivator master, today is really a joke. Shi Wenhan smiled bitterly with an ugly expression. The black fog on this strange old man was much thicker than Wu Baoliang and Cheng Haonan's. His evil aura deterred everyone present. If they still could not tell that this person was an evil cultivator, then everyone's eyeballs should be dug out. Anyway, it was useless to have it on his face. Lin Yi nodded with a gloomy expression and did not speak. From the moment this strange old man appeared, the whole situation had completely gone out of control. Even the insignificant people present were trembling with fear. Lin Yi, who was stared at by Cheng Haonan with malicious intent, was naturally in a precarious position. He was probably in danger today. Lin Yi clenched his fists. At this time, he could not rely on others. He could only rely on himself. Although there were so many people present who kept shouting that good and evil could not coexist, and chased after Cheng Haonan like a rat on the street, times had changed. With absolute strength, he had absolute right to speak. With the terrifying strength of this strange old man at the mountain opening stage, it did not matter whether he was an evil cultivator or not, because no one present dared to resist him no matter what he said. Once they resisted, there would only be one end, death. The situation was stronger than the person. At this time, no one dared not to bow down, not to mention that the opponent was an evil cultivator. Even if the opponent was a bandit who robbed all their belongings, no one present would dare to act rashly. They could only swallow their pride and obediently bury their heads like ostriches, facing a heretic cultivator at the mountain opening stage. It wasn't sad to pretend to be a coward, it was sad to die. Amidst the deathly silence, Boundless Sea, who was embedded in the ground, struggled for a bit. With his face covered in blood, he climbed up in a sorry state, panting heavily. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Before the opponent got serious, he wouldn't die so easily. Of course, he was in a sorry state, and he was also heavily injured. Boundless Sea tossed his laughable plan of farming reputation to the back of his mind. After staggering up, he didn't even look at Cheng Haonan. He only dared to sneak a glance at the strange old man. Like everyone else, he shrunk his neck, not daring to breathe. However, Boundless Sea didn't dare cause trouble for himself. But this strange old man's gaze fell on him. Who told this idiot to steal the limelight? You're the host of this shitty conference. The strange old man looked coldly at Boundless Sea. His voice was even drier and more ear-piercing than before, giving everyone goosebumps. It was extremely unpleasant to listen to, but no matter how unpleasant it was, no one had any objections. They could only obediently endure it. Being stared at by the strange old man's sinister gaze, Boundless Sea instantly pissed his pants. His knees went soft, and he couldn't help but kneel on the ground. He hurriedly shook his head and stammered, No, this humble one isn't, this humble one was impulsive just now. Please forgive this humble one's offense. Boundless Sea pointed at Qi Mingyuan. Without hesitation, he sold out the new overlord of the escort agency. Everyone in the audience immediately looked at him with disdain. Even though they didn't dare to go against this evil cultivator in front of them, This didn't stop them from looking down on this spineless, boundless sea. He spoke righteously and sternly, but at this critical moment he really was more nimble than anyone else. Seeing the strange old man's sinister gaze, Qi Mingyuan's heart tightened, but he didn't say anything. Even though he couldn't go against this kind of existence, he definitely wouldn't be like boundless sea and shamelessly kneel in front of everyone. Okay, it doesn't matter who it is. In any case, this sect will temporarily take over your conference. If there's anyone who isn't satisfied, you can bring it up right now, the strange old man said with a condescending expression. Everyone nodded their heads. No one dared to say anything at this moment. Opposing would be courting death. No one here was an idiot, and no one would be the one to stick their head out. Not bad, you're all tactful. Even though there haven't been 10,000 experts that have died by my hands, there's at least 8,000. However, after these years of cultivation, this sect doesn't really want to go on a killing spree. Being a bit more obedient is also a good thing for you. The strange old man smiled sinisterly and then added, "Let me introduce myself. This sect comes from Western Mountain, and my Dao name is Western Mountain Elder." Western Mountain Elder. The entire magic cold plaza immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. If it was said that there was a trace of unrealistic hope in everyone's hearts before, now that hope had been completely shattered, no one dared to harbor any disloyal thoughts anymore. What about Western Mountain? Lin Yi couldn't help but be slightly surprised when he saw everyone's shocked expressions. He had heard of Western Island, but he had never heard of Western Mountain. Could it be a special place in the southern continent sea? Huh, brotherling, you actually don't know? Qi Wenhan, who was beside him, had a surprised look on his face. He quickly lowered his voice and explained, Western Mountain is the most famous gathering place for heretic cultivators. The most ferocious and strongest heretic cultivators in the entire Heaven Stage Island are all gathered in Western Mountain, forming a Western Mountain evil sect. I heard that the leader of this Western Mountain evil sect is called Western Mountain Elder, and the second leader under him is this Western Mountain Elder. A gathering place for heretic cultivators? There's such a place. Lin instantly felt even more strange. He had never heard of such a thing. Were heretic cultivators not like street rats that could only hide and not see the light of day? The existence of heretic cultivators could not even be tolerated in a chaotic place like the southern continent sea, let alone Heaven Stage Island where there were many other powerful sections. In the understanding of normal people, a gathering place for heretic cultivators like Western Mountain evil sect that existed openly was obviously waiting for the major sects to join forces and encircle and annihilate it. Yes, it has existed for a long time. I heard that many years ago, the major sects of Middle Island, Northern Island, and Western Island even joined forces to encircle and annihilate it, but in the end, nothing happened. Qi Wenhan shrugged and sighed. What? Western Mountain evil sect is actually so strong. Lin, he could not help but click his tongue as he asked in shock. R1152. Chapter 4503. Even though they had a mountain opening stage powerhouse, the other sects on Heavenly Island weren't to be trifled with. With the combined forces of the Middle, North, and West Islands, if they really sent out their top experts, Shishan Evil Sect wouldn't be able to hold on no matter how strong they were. Shishan Evil Sect is strong, but apparently the two sides didn't really fight. The Righteous Alliance only knows that Shishan is somewhere between West Island and South Continent, but they don't know the exact location. Plus, that area of the sea is extremely dangerous, and there seems to be all sorts of high-level formations set up around it. The Righteous Alliance spent a month there and still couldn't find Shishan Evil Sect's nest, so they had no choice but to let it go, Qi Wenhan explained. He had only heard it from others and didn't know much about it. The version, he told Lin Yi, was the most widely spread version. As for whether or not it was true, only the person involved would know. So that's how it is. Lin Yi nodded in realization. That made sense. If the two sides were to fight head-on and the alliance of the righteous sex still couldn't beat the evil sex, it'd really be a bit speechless. Wouldn't that be the sky-class island version of Six Sex surrounding Light Peak? As the two whispered to each other, Chung Haonan had already walked up to Shishan Old Sec's side. Shishan Old Sec's next words made everyone's eyelids twitch. Chung Haonan is now our sect's disciple. I've officially accepted him as my disciple. From what you said, it seems like you want to kill him. No, that's not true. Senior, you misunderstood. Boundless Sea was scared half to death and hastily tried to explain. He suddenly saw the mocking expression on Lin Yi's face and immediately said loudly, "It's Lingwan. Yes, it's Lingwan who wants to kill him." Everyone was speechless. Boundless Sea was the only one who could be this shameless. Just now, he had clearly wanted to use Chung Haonan to boost his reputation. Now that disaster was upon him, he didn't even bat an eyelid and pushed the blame onto Chung Haonan. Lingwan, following Boundless Sea's finger, West Mountain's old sect master's sinister gaze fell on Lin Yi. He laughed coldly. "My previous disciple, Wu Baoliang, died by your hands." "Not bad." Lin Yi calmly nodded his head. There was no way he could deny it. Plus, with his personality, he wouldn't deny it either. After all, he wasn't Boundless Sea. "Oh, you dare to take responsibility for your actions? I didn't expect you to be a real man." The West Mountain Elder's already strange expression suddenly became even more ferocious and terrifying. He shouted coldly, "Do you know that he is not only my direct disciple, but also my nephew?" "I didn't know, but now I know." Lin Yi's expression was still indifferent. He thought to himself, no wonder these two have a pair of triangular yin-yang eyes. So they are uncle and nephew. Listening to Lin Yi's infuriating reply, everyone present couldn't help but have strange expressions, especially Qi Wenhan, Qi Mingyuan, and Honest Chai. They were sweating for him, thinking that Masterling was still too young. This wasn't the time to act like a hero. He'd really die if he did that. Sure enough, West Mountain's old sect master was so angry that his face turned ashen. It was almost the same color as his eyebrows. Black fog suddenly surged out from his head. The sky instantly darkened. It was as if the end of the world was coming. Just when everyone thought that West Mountain's old sect master couldn't hold back his killing intent and that Lin Yi was dead for sure, the black clouds above his head suddenly dispersed. The sky became clear again, and the sun shone brightly. West Mountain's old sect master's killing intent suddenly disappeared. He didn't get angry and instead laughed. "You have guts. You really have guts. This nephew of mine is the same as you." Back then, he dared to break out of the mountain just for a trivial matter. "I've long said that evil cultivators who swagger through the streets will not have a good ending. Now that he has fallen to this state, his death is not undeserved." Hearing his words, not only were the others confused, even Lin Yi was a little stunned. What did he mean by this? Everyone thought that he was going to take revenge for Wu Baoliang, but in the end he actually changed the topic and said that Wu Baoliang's death was not unjust. The actions of experts were indeed unfathomable. This kind of strange thinking of an evil cultivator was even more incomprehensible. "I also heard that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was driven out by you." West Mountain's old sect master retracted his gaze from Lin Yi and changed the topic to this irrelevant matter. Everyone was even more confused and looked at each other. No, we didn't drive them out. We didn't drive them out." Boundless Sea was the first to recover from his shock and hurriedly said, "The Dragon Boat Escort Agency is ranked second. From now on, there will be 6 great escort agencies. The old calendar of 5 great escort agencies should be changed long ago." Everyone couldn't help but feel a burst of disdain. F***CK, this guy is too shameless. The ironclad rules of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance should be changed just like that? What F***king 6 great escort agencies? Even at this time, they still didn't forget to take care of their own Four Seas escort agency. They were really cunning. Although in front of an evil cultivator, no one dared to say anything for the sake of their lives. Everyone still had a bit of integrity in their hearts. However, there was nothing much to say about someone like Boundless Sea. This guy had already become the evil cultivator's lackey. Not only was he not ashamed, he even had the shameless expression of a man who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. You're quite tactful. Scram to the side. Shishan's old sect master had a mocking smile on his face. He turned to look at Chung Haonan and said, "Disciple, let's get down to business. I'll give you a chance to personally take revenge. Go get rid of that Ling Yi, and then we'll go to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency together. It's rare for me to come out, so I have a lot of things to do this time." Long Kiba heard this and was immediately overjoyed. Previously, when Boundless Sea said that his Dragon Boat Escort Agency would once again become the number 2 escort agency, he wasn't this excited. After all, this was expected. He had already mentally prepared himself for this, so there was nothing to be surprised about. But now, Shishan's old sect master actually said that he wanted to go to his Dragon Boat Escort Agency. This was something that he couldn't even dream of. Long Kiba was so excited that he almost slapped himself. F***CK. This is the great giant of the opening period. So what if he's an evil cultivator? Who would dare to say no? In the South Continent seas, there were often people who said that good and evil couldn't coexist. But from the expressions of everyone here, especially Boundless Sea, it could be seen that the bigger the fist was the truth. As long as one was strong enough, evil cultivators could also become mainstream. Not convinced? Then I'll punch you to death. R 1152. Chapter 4504. With the West Mountain Elder, the business of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would not decrease because of the existence of the evil cultivator. Instead, it would be much more profitable than before. Even the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, the new hegemon of escort agencies, would not be able to compete with it. Businessmen prioritized profits above all else. They didn't care if they were heretical cultivators or not. As long as they could intimidate thieves and pirates, as long as they could deliver their goods safely and reliably, then they would choose a powerful escort agency as their first choice. In the end, the winner was king. As long as one's strength was strong enough, even evil cultivators were righteous. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency had the West Mountain Elder, an opening period elder, in charge. It was not a stain, but a blessing that could not be obtained in a few lifetimes. As long as the West Mountain Elder was around, absolutely no one would dare to provoke the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. As long as the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's flag was displayed on the ship, even pirates and robbers would have to hide far away. Otherwise, if they dared to have any evil thoughts, they would be enemies with the West Mountain Elder. Even 10 lives would not be enough to kill them. In contrast, the restoration of second place was secondary. It could even be said that it did not matter. With the West Mountain Elder's words today, it would be fine even if the Dragon Boat Escort Agency did not participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance in the future. With the opening period elder in charge, would they be afraid of no business? Long Kiba was ecstatic, but at this moment the focus was not on him, but Chung Haonan and Lin Yi. Everyone saw that the West Mountain Elder changed the topic and did not mention anything about avenging his nephew and disciple, Wu Baoliang. They thought that he was going to let Lin Yi go, but they did not expect that he was leaving it for Chung Haonan. Yes, your disciple will send Ling Yi's head to avenge Senior Wu as a gift for becoming my disciple. Chung Haonan was immediately in high spirits. Although the identity of the Poison Eye mercenary group's boss sounded impressive, in the eyes of the higher-ups, it was not even worth mentioning. Not to mention those large sects, even people like Qi Mingyuan could clearly look down on him. But now it was different. He would replace Wu Baoliang and become the direct disciple of the West Mountain Elder. This was a powerful background that no one dared to underestimate. From now on, Chung Haonan would usher in a turning point in his life, and he would soar into the sky. Of course, all of this was thanks to Ling Yi, and Chung Haonan's road to meteoric success would start from killing Ling Yi. Chung Haonan arrogantly walked over step by step, while the main character, Lin Yi, was still calm and unruffled. Qi Wenhan and the others, on the other hand, paled and lost their heads out of fear. No matter what, they would always stand on Lin Yi's side. They had already formed a community of mutual benefits. No matter if it was Qi Wenhan or Qi Mingyuan, or even Honest Chai who stood among the representatives of the Chamber of Commerce, none of them would abandon Lin Yi at this moment. But the problem was, they really had no way to deal with Chung Haonan. They did not need to be too afraid of Chung Haonan. But what could they use to fight against the West Mountain Elder? In terms of strength, all of them together would not be a match for the West Mountain Elder. If they suddenly jumped out at this time, they would only be courting death. But they could not just watch as Lin Yi was killed by Chung Haonan, right? Those who saw the battle yesterday knew that Lin Yi was suppressed by Chung Haonan from start to finish. Even when he used the ultimate killing technique, the frenzied 1,000 burst fists, it was useless. Chung Haonan had absolute power over him, and he was not a match for him at all. It had only been a day, and no normal person, including Qi Wenhan and the others, thought that Lin Yi wouldn't be able to turn things around successfully. Against the aggressive Chung Haonan, Lin Yi was bound to lose. But if he lost today, then the result would be very different from yesterday's duel on the stage. Yesterday, as long as he fell off the stage, he could keep his life. But today, it was a fight to the death. Seeing that Qi Wenhan was about to jump out, Lin Yi hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop him. He said in a low voice, "This is my business. You guys just watch carefully." Qi Wenhan opened his mouth to say something, but Lin Yi did not give him the chance. After giving him a look, he walked out of the crowd and took the initiative to meet Chung Haonan. Lin Yi was very clear that he had to pass today. Qi Wenhan and the others could not help him at all. Instead, if the West Mountain Elder took out his anger because of him, then it would be really troublesome. You really have guts. You actually dare to take the initiative to stand out? Seeing this scene, Chung Haonan could not help but raise his eyebrows. He clenched his fists and sneered, "I want to know, is there something wrong with your brain? Do you think you can beat me? Whether I can win or not. How do you know if I don't fight?" Lin Yi asked with a faint smile. His expression was still calm and composed. Even if the West Mountain Elder was fighting not far away, he did not have the slightest intention of stage fright. This kind of bearing really made everyone present speechless. Each of them secretly thought that it was a pity. With this kind of bearing, this boy would certainly achieve great things in the future. It was a pity that he had offended the West Mountain Elder. Today he was destined to die young. "Oh, your tone is not small. Fortunately, my memory is not bad. Otherwise, I would have thought that I had lost to you yesterday." Chung Haonan wantonly ridiculed. His body suddenly emitted a layer of black gas. His aura suddenly became fierce and domineering. Impressively, he had actually activated the state of his whole body turning black. Obviously, Chung Haonan did not intend to give Lin Yi any chance to resist today. After all, this was his first battle after joining the West Mountain Elder. If he could not get rid of Lin Yi cleanly and neatly, it was inevitable that he would lose face in the eyes of the West Mountain Elder. So today he must go all out. Super ultimate physical technique. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched slightly. If it was not for the West Mountain Elder's covetous eyes, he really had the mood to have a good fight with Chung Haonan. After all, his newly developed ultimate physical skill and ultimate physical skill were still lacking in practice, and this was the perfect opportunity for him to do so. Perhaps after this battle, his mastery in this aspect would improve by leaps and bounds, and he would directly go from the beginner level to the next level. However, for now, staying alive was more important. Lin Yi shook his head with some regret. In the eyes of Chung Haonan and the others, His performance became a blatant provocation. No matter who saw their opponent shake his head, they would probably think the same way. Humph, you still dare to pretend when you are about to die. Among the people I have seen, you are really the prettiest. You really don't even know how to write the word death. Chung Haonan let out a long howl. His body instantly transformed into a ghostly black shadow and pounced towards Lin Yi. His speed under the state of the dark state was very shocking. With such a sudden attack, even most of the original infant stage masters would not be able to react in time, let alone a mere Lin Yi. R. 1152. Chapter 4505. Qi Wenhan and the others' hearts suddenly tightened. Their eyes were firmly fixed on Lin Yi's body, fearing that something bad would happen to him. Oh, do you know what happened to the people who ridiculed me for being a pretentious prick? Lin Yi was calm and unhurried. In the face of Chung Haonan's full power outburst, he was not the slightest bit afraid. His figure violently retreated in an attempt to maintain a distance, and at the same time he calmly asked, "I don't know, and I don't want to know." Chung Haonan sneered. In his eyes, Lin Yi was already a dead man. He had no interest in talking nonsense with a dead man. I'll be merciful and tell you. I'm a soft-hearted person, and I'm afraid that you won't be able to rest in peace. They're all dead. Lin Yi was still calm and indifferent, and the ridicule on his face was obvious. Looking at this scene, the entire audience couldn't help but have a strange expression. Including Qi Wenhan and the others, they all felt that Lin Yi's current situation pointed to disaster. Who would have thought that at this time he still had the heart to make fun of Chung Haonan? Was this a case of being bold because of his skill, or was it an indication that he knew that a great disaster was imminent and was addicted to talking before his death? Humph, at this time you can only talk big. Since you have so much skill, then why are you still running? Hurry up and kill me. Chung Haonan laughed cruelly, but in his heart he was somewhat surprised. Lin Yi's current speed seemed to be somewhat different from yesterday's. In yesterday's duel, although this kid's movement technique seemed to be exceptionally exquisite, and his speed was much faster than those ordinary experts, but compared to Chung Haonan, it was still somewhat inferior. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been suppressed by him all the time. What's more, he had now activated his entire body's dark state, and his speed had skyrocketed a lot. In theory, he should be able to close in on Lin Yi in an instant. But now, a full 3 breaths had passed, and although the distance between them had been shortened, it was not obvious. What was even more outrageous was that Lin Yi's body revealed a trace of qi fluctuation, which made Chung Haonan feel that it was very similar to himself. Such a strange situation clearly did not appear yesterday. Could it be? When he thought that Wu Baoliang had died under the 1,000 violent flame fist, which was the same as his 1,000 violent sand fist, Chung Haonan could not help but shiver. Although it was very unbelievable, if there was a first, there might be a second time. Maybe this kid really had the terrifying ability to give others a taste of their own medicine and had learned his super movement technique. The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became. Chung Haonan was no longer as confident as before. The reason why he was able to suppress Lin Yi in all aspects yesterday was because of the difference in their physical skills. Now that he'd lost this advantage, even if he could still beat Lin Yi, it'd be very difficult. After all, this was not some shrimp soldier or crab general, but an existence that could kill Wu Baoliang head-on. In the face of an expert of this level, Chung Haonan would fail miserably if he was not careful. Seeing the uncertainty on Chung Haonan's face, Lin Yi knew that the guy had noticed something. He didn't hide it anymore and used the newly formed super butterfly micro-steps to its fullest. His speed increased drastically, and the distance between them that was getting closer and closer was instantly widened by a few body lengths. Sure enough, this time, Chung Haonan completely verified the conjecture in his heart, and he couldn't help but howl with rage, his eyes spitting fire. This wasn't just a chance for him to take revenge for his son Qingqian. It was also a chance for him to become a subordinate of the Shishan old sect. Getting rid of Lin Yi was the most basic requirement. So how could he allow any accidents to occur? The black gas on his body suddenly became thicker, and at the same time it began to show signs of being out of control. Cheng Haonan's speed finally skyrocketed again. He was going all out. It couldn't be helped. He was fast purely because of his super physical arts, and he didn't train in any advanced techniques. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was a typical speedmaster, and now that he was using butterfly micro steps, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Just this state alone was faster than Lin Yi's entire body turning black. Of course, this was also because Lin Yi had just broken through to the peak of the middle phase of Golden Elixir, and his strength was already a level higher. Now that he had the super butterfly micro step, the two stacked together, the increase was naturally not small. What's more, the same method in the hands of different people would have a world of difference. Cheng Haonan was the authentic super physical technique and ultimate physical technique. But now he met the freak Lin Yi, and the effect became a counterfeit. Who could he find to reason with? Cheng Haonan was now about to vomit blood. This was not purely because he was angry, but because he was forced to do so. The entire body turning black was already the limit that he could master normally. Now, in order to catch up with Lin Yi, he did not hesitate to go further. Although his speed was faster, he had already suffered a serious internal injury. In order to leave a good impression in the heart of the West Mountain Elder, he did not hesitate to exchange his life for speed. If this drags on for a little longer, he will be exhausted to death. What a pity. Lin Yi could not help but shake his head when he saw this. He had thoroughly studied the blackened state overnight. Of course, he knew what state Cheng Haonan was in at the moment. If he was not afraid of the West Mountain Elder who was watching from the side, he would have the opportunity to kill Cheng Haonan in this situation. But now, seeing that Cheng Haonan was rapidly closing the distance again, he could not be entangled with this guy too much. Otherwise, even if he could kill Cheng Haonan today, there would be no way to escape later. Although Lin Yi's strength had increased greatly recently, the gap in strength between them was still there. No matter how heaven-defying he was, it was impossible to escape from the hands of an evil cultivator in the mountain opening stage. After all, he was only at the peak of the middle gold core stage, not the peak of the middle nascent soul stage. In any case, escaping was the way to go. This was also what Lin Yi had been secretly planning since he saw Cheng Haonan appear. Wahaha, didn't you escape quickly? Let's see how you escape now. Cheng Haonan did not care about the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He laughed proudly and arrogantly. He finally caught this guy. Escape. They were so close, but Lin Yi suddenly blinked and said with an unpredictable look, "Do you think I escaped because of you? Forget it in this life, but you should be more careful in the next life. Bullsh *T. Cheng Haonan just wanted to taunt with the attitude of a winner, but found that the opposite Lin Yi suddenly pushed his hand in his direction. In the eyes of a physical master who practiced both internal and external cultivation, it was strange no matter how he looked at it. How could such a slow palm have any lethality? However, when Lin Yi's palm was completely opened, Cheng Haonan felt the small but dark purple thing in his palm. Cheng Haonan's face suddenly changed. His eyes suddenly widened, and his expression became extremely frightened and hideous. R1152. Chapter 4506. He didn't know what a super bomb that was a combination of true qi and alchemy fire was, but his instincts told him that the little thing in Lin Yi's hand was extremely dangerous. If he didn't run away quickly, he would die. At the same time, the others didn't realize what was happening, but the West Mountain Elder, who was standing on the stage, suddenly raised his eyebrows. The dignified, evil cultivator of the opening period actually showed a trace of fear at this moment. In the eyes of the crowd, this was even rarer than the sun rising from the west. However, before the crowd could start discussing, what happened next made everyone speechless. The super bomb that Lin Yi had started to condense at the first sight of Chenghaonan instantly attacked the whole place. With the magic cold square as the center, the whole magic cold sea shook, and an unparalleled monstrous tsunami suddenly erupted. A huge mushroom cloud appeared in the sky above the magic cold city, shaking magnificently. The end of the world had come. As for the demon cold square, which was the center of the explosion, it was covered in dust at this moment. Even though the facilities that were still in good condition were protected by layers of formations, they were still destroyed in an instant. The people at the scene were in a complete mess, and it was a complete mess. There were many people who were injured by the bombs. In serious cases, they were even on the verge of death. However, there was a silver lining in the misfortune that everyone present today was at least an expert above the gold core stage. Otherwise, if it was like the South Continent S-Corps Agency Grand Gathering, there would be at least hundreds or thousands of people dead. That would really be a wrongful death. The whole place was in a mess. According to the trend of the dust filling the sky, the chaotic scene would last at least several hours before it could calm down. However, at this moment, a sudden black wind blew, sweeping away the dust instantly. The magic cold square finally saw the light of day again, and the messy scene was clear at a glance. Whether injured or not, everyone's first reaction was to look at Lin Yi's position, including experts at the peak of the late nascent soul stage like Boundless Sea. Everyone's face was filled with clear fear. Due to Lin Yi's strong performance in the previous competition, everyone present already thought highly of him. At least, they didn't treat him as an ordinary middle stage, golden core stage expert. In their hearts, his position had crossed a whole realm, enough to be comparable to a middle stage, nascent soul stage expert. However, they never expected that, even so, they still underestimated this freak. There was no doubt that the power of the heaven-defying explosion just now was enough to tear a peak late-stage, nascent, soul-stage expert like Boundless Sea into pieces in minutes. Thinking about how he wanted to stomp such a freak to death, Boundless Sea couldn't help but break out a cold sweat. Fortunately, he didn't go personally, otherwise he wouldn't even know how he died. Not only Boundless Sea, but even at this moment, even Qi Wenhan Qi, Lin Yi's allies were all shocked. They always thought Lin Yi was very strong, but they didn't know that Lin Yi was this. But at this moment, even if they wanted to show their respect, they didn't have the chance to do so. Lin Yi had disappeared without a trace, not even a shadow could be seen. As for Chenghaonan, who was in that position before, he also disappeared at this moment. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Suddenly, someone tried to suppress his voice, but still couldn't hide his shock, and exclaimed, "Look!" Everyone followed the voice, and finally found Chenghaonan's figure. At this moment, blood flowed from his 7 orifices, and there were more than a dozen big and small transparent holes all over his body. It was obvious that he was dead. This wasn't strange at all. He was less than 3 meters away from Lin Yi, and it was already a miracle for him to be able to leave an intact corpse at such a close distance. It was impossible for him to survive unless he was a mystic ascension master. No matter how strong Chenghaonan was, no matter how strong he was, his body was still in the golden core stage. With his defense, it was not surprising that he was blown to death. Chenghaonan's death was already expected by everyone, but what was really shocking was his current position. This guy was actually carried by a person with one hand. It was the West Mountain Elder with a gloomy face. The entire demonic cold square was in a mess, and only the area under the feet of the West Mountain sect master was undamaged. After all, the evil cultivators of the mountain opening period were extraordinary. Even so, it still couldn't change an embarrassing fact. The West Mountain sect master had clearly made a move just now, but he couldn't save Chenghaonan. At the moment when Lin Yi opened his palm and released the super bomb, the West Mountain Elder knew that things were not good. He knew that if this continued, Chenghaonan would die. This was his new disciple. If he let his disciple die in front of his eyes, Wouldn't he, the West Mountain Elder, be laughed at alive? So at this moment, the West Mountain Elder chose to save Chung Haonan, but unfortunately he was still too late. He did snatch Chung Haonan back, but he had already become a broken body. How dare you! The West Mountain Elder's face was livid. His hoarse and sharp voice attacked the eardrums of everyone present, causing everyone to bury their heads, not daring to look at him. Even the stupidest person could see that this opening stage evil cultivator had suffered a loss in the hands of Lin Yi. Now was the time for him to be angry. If anyone dared to show any disrespect, this West Mountain Elder might massacre everyone present. Although he said that he was cultivating, he was an evil cultivator after all. If he didn't kill, how could he live up to his title as an evil cultivator? When Qi Wenhan and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but be ecstatic. Although they didn't know the specific situation, they could at least be sure that Lin Yi seemed to have escaped safely. To be able to escape under the eyes of an opening phase practitioner was something that even an original soul practitioner wouldn't dare imagine, let alone a golden core practitioner. However, Lin Yi managed to do it. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. As expected, miracles were everywhere he went. At this moment, everyone's eyes secretly fell on the West Mountain Elder. They were all wondering how this opening stage evil cultivator would react. Would he be angry, or would he pretend to be an expert? However, what the crowd didn't expect was that as soon as their eyes focused on him, the figure of the West Mountain Patriarch suddenly disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't for the corpse of Chung Haonan that was riddled with holes on the ground, everyone would have thought that this person had never appeared. At the same time, 50 miles away, Lin Yi couldn't care less about the surging injuries in his body. He was trying his best to use the super butterfly micro steps to quickly get away from Devil Lung City. R 1152. Chapter 4507. Before the West Mountain Elder appeared, from the first time he saw Chung Haonan, the escape plan had already been brewing in his mind. Opportunities were always given to those who were prepared, and Lin Yi was the kind of person who could create opportunities for himself even if there was no opportunity. Otherwise, he would not have a chance to successfully escape today. Condensing the super bomb was the first step, retreating while fighting against Chung Haonan was the second step, and the moment the super bomb was released, he used the recoil of the bomb to bounce himself away, which was the most crucial step. In contrast, killing Chung Haonan was just a matter of convenience. Without the strong recoil of the super bomb, Lin Yi would not be able to fly 50 miles away like this. Although it was very risky to move 50 miles away in an instant, it was the most important condition to escape from the West Mountain Elder. Otherwise, no matter how confident Lin Yi was, he would not be able to escape from the hands of an opening mountain stage evil cultivator purely with speed. Although he used true qi to protect his body in advance, Lin Yi was still injured by the super bomb at such a close distance. There was no other way. This was the minimum price to pay for escaping. However, Lin Yi could not heal himself yet. 50 miles could get rid of Yuanying stage masters and even profound ascending stage masters. But whether he could get rid of an opening mountain stage evil cultivator, Lin Yi was not sure at all. So at this time he did not dare to take it lightly, and escaped as far as possible at all costs. While escaping quickly, he could not help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Thanks to the super butterfly microstep that he developed last night, and thanks to the breakthrough this morning, this escape plan would not be so smooth. If there was even one mistake in the middle, even if there was only one step, he would die without a burial place. The direction that Lin Yi was escaping to was a mountain range in the south of Mo Lung City. This was also the only direction he could choose. To the east and north of Mo Lung City was the vast sea, and although to the west was also a mountain range, the secret dungeon of the Central Chamber of Commerce was in the west. With the lesson from last time, Lin Yi didn't dare to take the initiative to run into this kind of dead end. That was definitely walking into a trap. After all, there were a bunch of mystic ascension stage masters there. In terms of danger, it wasn't any less than Shishan, Old Master. Of course, if he had no other choice, Lin Yi might have chosen to escape to the west. It would have been perfect if the two sides started fighting each other. But now that everything was going smoothly, there was no need for Lin Yi to jump into a pit with a high chance of survival. The wind howled in his ears, and he estimated that he was at least 60 miles away from Malimcheng. Just when he was about to let out a sigh of relief, a black wind came from behind him, and a silhouette appeared from the thick black mist. It was the red-haired, green-browed elder Shishan. "Humph, you run pretty fast, but you killed 2 of my disciples in a row. Do you think I let you go so easily?" The West Mountain elder stared at Lin Yi with a pair of triangular eyes. His face twisted as he laughed coldly. Feeling the cold killing intent coming from above, Lin Yi's heart suddenly fell into an ice cellar and his whole body froze. Everything was going smoothly, and he had escaped 50 miles away in an instant. How could the opponent catch up so easily? Lin Yi had experienced many dangerous situations, but now that he was being stared at by the West Mountain elder, he suddenly felt that death had become unprecedentedly close to him. He even felt that the blood in his body had begun to turn cold. This was the giant of the opening stage. Lin Yi's face became ugly, and he was sweating profusely. He had been very careful in dealing with it, but he suddenly realized that he still did not understand the true meaning of this name. A master of the gold core stage wanted to escape from this kind of existence, and even wanted to escape unscathed. From the moment this idea appeared, it actually showed that Lin Yi was too confident or even overconfident. "You killed 2 of my disciples in a row. It seems a little too easy to kill you. Even if you are torn into pieces, it will not relieve the hatred in my heart. Otherwise, I will make you into a puppet." The West Mountain elder was not in a hurry to kill, but he pinched his chin and said with a smile, "Although your strength is not so good, you should be very suitable to be a puppet. Maybe you will become a trump card puppet with the potential to grow. He 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 he." The evil cultivators had always been famous for their coldness. The loss of 2 disciples was not as big a blow to him as ordinary people thought. Especially Cheng Haonan was just a cheap disciple who had not even officially entered the sect. It did not matter whether he died or not. Instead, the idea that suddenly emerged now made the West Mountain elder feel very happy. With the strength of Lin Yi's mere gold core stage, he could not enter the eyes of such a big figure. Even if he was made into a puppet, he would only be a gold core stage puppet. It could only be useful for those below the gold core stage. What use would it be for him, the evil cultivator of the opening stage? However, the terrifying power that Lin Yi had just released at that moment, even the West Mountain elder had to be afraid. With the strength of a master of the gold core stage, he could actually overpower all the masters of the Yuanying stage. If such a genius was used as a puppet, it would definitely be the best of the best. It was completely possible to become a trump card puppet. A trump card puppet with the potential to grow, even if its starting point was only the gold core stage. As long as it continued to be refined and improved, it could go one step further to the Yuanying stage, the profound ascension stage, or even the opening mountain stage. That was the real killer. The West Mountain elder suddenly felt that it was worth coming this time. If it was not for Lin Yi's super bomb that shocked him, he would not have thought of such a wonderful idea. After all, the requirements for the quality of the materials to become a trump card puppet were too high. It must be 1 in a billion, a super genius among super geniuses. Even people like Cheng Haonan and Wu Baoliang were far from qualified. However, it was obvious that this Lin Yi who suddenly appeared should have a little hope. Anyway, it would be a waste to kill him, so it would be a waste not to try. Trump card puppet? Go to hell. Of course, Lin Yi would not give up just like that. If he really became the trump card puppet of the West Mountain elder, it would be worse than death. He immediately used the super butterfly microsteps to turn around and escape. As they were very close to the south bank, it was no longer realistic to want to lead the West Mountain Elder to the west. Before that, they would definitely be caught. Moreover, even if Lin Yi really did that, it would be useless because the masters of the Central Chamber of Commerce had already left. R1152. Chapter 4508. Covering his head and running to the south bank was a last resort, and he didn't even know if he'd be able to make it to the south bank. He didn't even have a plan for what to do after that. He could only take one step at a time. Hee, you still don't give up at this time? Your perseverance is really commendable, but you are a little stupid. You don't even know that a wise man submits to circumstances. You deserve to be a brainless puppet. The West Mountain Old Master floated in the black fog in the air and calmly watched Lin Yi running wildly on the ground. Lin Yi didn't stop his footsteps. He couldn't help but mock Lin Yi inwardly. A wise man submits to circumstances was a phrase used to persuade others to submit. And now you're trying to turn me into a puppet? Who the hell would be willing to be a puppet in human form? An evil cultivator was indeed an evil cultivator. Even the giants of the mountain opening period were so uncultured, of course. Sneering was just sneering. Lin Yi wouldn't be stupid enough to turn back and bicker with the West Mountain Old Master. That would definitely affect his escape speed. Maybe he still had a chance of survival, but because of bickering he would destroy his last chance of survival. This kind of stupid thing Lin Yi couldn't do. However, the chance of survival that Lin Yi imagined was simply a fart in the eyes of the West Mountain Old Master. To be more precise, it was not even a fart. It was true that Lin Yi's full display of the super butterfly microsteps at this moment was indeed extremely fast. Before he could get rid of Chung Haonan, who was in the state of blackness, it was enough to make most of the Yuanying stage masters look at him in the dust. Unfortunately, he was now facing the West Mountain Old Master. The difference in strength between them was too great. The difference was so great that the understanding of the speed of the movement was completely different. Lin Yi's speed was only fast in the sense of space. It was only the concept of fast in the ordinary people's concept. However, the West Mountain Old Master's understanding of speed had reached the level of time and space. It sounded mystical, but in reality, Lin Yi's body was already a series of afterimages. Even arrows couldn't keep up with his speed, and this speed was enough to make people's eyes pop out of their sockets. Looking at the West Hill Elder in the air, the speed he was moving at was completely out of the range of what normal people could accept. The moment before, he was left behind by Lin Yi for a full 4 or 5 miles. But the next moment, he would find that the West Mountain Old Master in the black fog suddenly appeared above Lin Yi's head without warning. It gave people the feeling that he had broken through the shackles of space and achieved a space jump. This strange situation happened several times in a row. No matter how hard Lin Yi tried to adjust the direction of the route, no matter how he tried to conceal his aura, it was useless. Every time he tried to open up a little distance, the West Mountain Old Master would always appear above his head. Everything was useless. If it was not for Lin Yi's strong enough nerves, if it was someone else, they would have collapsed and knelt down. This huge pressure that followed like a shadow was really desperate. In fact, even Lin Yi, in the face of this unprecedented situation, could not help but have a trace of loosening in his mind. Hee, I've finally found an opportunity. The West Mountain Old Master was overjoyed when he saw this. An evil and dark tentacle of consciousness instantly covered the top of Lin Yi's head. With this, he was going to deprive Lin Yi's soul. Soul Hook Hand. If he simply wanted to kill Lin Yi, with the means of the West Mountain Old Master, 100 Lin Yi would have long been dead. However, he wanted to capture Lin Yi and use him as a puppet, so he did not want to be heavy-handed. Although corpses could also be used to make puppets, they could only be ordinary puppets. If one wanted to refine a trump puppet, the minimum requirement was a fresh body. Of course, as long as the body was fresh, it would be fine. The soul and consciousness could still be erased if possible. After all, these things did not have the slightest advantage in refining a Trump puppet. Instead, it would only be harmful. However, the soul of human cultivators was born extremely strong. The soul of any ordinary person was extremely tough, let alone a high-level cultivator. Even with the means of the West Mountain Old Master, it was not so easy to erase all the soul and consciousness at once. He must find a suitable breakthrough point. When a person's mind was shocked and lost, the spirit was the most vulnerable to heavy damage. This was the opportunity that the West Mountain Old Master had been waiting for. For this reason, he did not hesitate to come over Lin Yi's head again and again to stimulate Lin Yi, just to wait for this moment. Anyway, Lin Yi had been locked by his consciousness. Under his eyes, no matter how fast or how far he escaped, it would be useless. As long as he moved his mind, he could tear the space and appear above his head. Therefore, the West Mountain Old Master was not afraid that Lin Yi would escape. For a rare material that could be refined into a Trump puppet, it was necessary to spend more effort. With the sole hook hand over his head, Lin Yi, who was sparing no effort to use the super butterfly subtle steps, was suddenly frozen. The boundless, bone-chilling cold instantly enveloped his whole body. His whole body seemed to be frozen in an instant and could no longer move. Lin Yi suddenly became anxious because, at this moment, he felt that the top of his head was opened. There was clearly an invisible hand that was pulling his soul and consciousness out of his body little by little. His whole consciousness began to become blurred. This was the means of the evil cultivators of the opening period. This time, Lin Yi finally opened his eyes, but he was about to pay the price of his life. After that, he was even going to be refined into a puppet with no consciousness. But he could not resist at all. He could only feel his consciousness fading away little by little. It couldn't be helped. So far, Lin Yi had never encountered such a high-level level. It was like an ancient swordsman suddenly encountered the sniper of modern firearms. They were not on the same level at all. His whole person had long been stunned. How could he know how to resist for a while? Seeing that Lin Yi didn't resist at all, and his aura was getting weaker and weaker, the West Mountain Elder laughed with glee. His nephew Wu Baoliang's death was a pity, but Cheng Haonan's death was insignificant. These two people could be exchanged for such an excellent material for a puppet. In his eyes, it was not a loss at all. "Boy, are you going to accept your fate?" Suddenly, there was a loud shout in Lin Yi's mind. It was the voice of the ghost. "Say, Senior." Lin Yi muttered with some blurred consciousness. He was like a person who fell into the water and grabbed the last life-saving straw. He struggled with all his might, but what he really showed was just a slight movement of his fingers. That was all. This was the limit of what he could do. Because his entire soul and divine sense were covered by the West Mountain Old Sect Master's soul-reaping hand. His body was no longer under his control. If this dragged on for a moment, his soul and divine sense would be completely hooked away. At that time, he would completely lose his consciousness, and that would truly be beyond saving. R 1152. Chapter 4509. Wake up! No one knew what magical means the ghost thing used. After a loud shout, it suddenly made Lin Yi, who was in a daze, feel refreshed, but the West Mountain Old Master suddenly trembled, and his expression suddenly changed. His soul-hooking hand was an extremely exquisite and profound divine sense skill. Once he seized the opportunity of losing his mind, then let alone a master of the gold core stage, even a Yuanying stage, or even a profound ascension stage, could only be slaughtered by him. This was not something that could be resisted by strong willpower alone. There must be corresponding divine sense means. Otherwise, everything would be in vain. Although Lin Yi's previous performance was shocking, especially the super bomb, which even shocked the West Mountain Old Master, but the level was still there. If Lin Yi could use the divine sense means now, the West Mountain Old Master absolutely would not believe it, even if he was beaten to death. In fact, Lin Yi's current mastery of divine sense was limited to the most basic divine sense perception, not to mention any exquisite and profound divine sense skills. Even some of the most basic small skills could not be mastered. It was a pity that the West Mountain Old Master only guessed one point, but he could never guess the second point. He probably would not know that there was a ghost thing hidden in Lin Yi's body in this life. This guy was a primordial spirit master, and his attainments in divine sense were far above the West Mountain Old Master. Although the ghost thing was still in the state of a broken primordial spirit, and it was not realistic to fight against the West Mountain Old Master. But if it only wanted to save Lin Yi, it was easy. You still have the strength to resist? Hee. What a rare genius, a natural-born ace puppet. The West Mountain Old Master did not understand the situation, thinking that it was Lin Yi who was barely holding on with his own willpower. He was not surprised, but happy, and immediately increased the power of the soul-hooking hand. Lin Yi, who had just been awakened by the ghost thing, had not had time to recover. At this time, he immediately became shaky again. He only felt that there was an unparalleled suction coming from the top of his head, madly sucking his soul and divine sense, and it seemed that it would not stop until he died. Humph! You dare to show off in front of me with such unscrupulous methods. The ghostly thing let out another cold snort. No one knew what method it used, but the invisible hand that the West Mountain Patriarch used to cover Lin Yi's head was instantly shattered by an inexplicable force. The West Mountain Patriarch staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had actually suffered internal injuries. This time, the West Mountain Elder was stunned. He was an evil cultivator who was comparable to a mountain opening stage expert. Now he was actually injured by a mere gold core stage expert. When had such an outrageous thing happened in the world? Before he did not save Chung Haonan in time, it could only be said that he suffered a loss because he was caught off guard by Lin Yi, but now he was really injured internally. This was not as simple as suffering a loss. Although this injury was not serious, the West Mountain Patriarch's expression obviously became a lot more dignified. As a powerful evil cultivator, it was impossible for him not to understand the principle of being careful. Otherwise, he would not be alive today. Although he would not be afraid of Lin Yi because of this, at least he would not be able to do it as easily as he did just now. At the same time that the West Mountain Patriarch was injured by the ghost thing, Lin Yi took the opportunity to get rid of the entanglement of the soul-hooking hand. He finally regained consciousness, and then he was scared into a cold sweat. Fortunately, there was the help of the ghost thing, otherwise he would really die without a burial place this time. Thank you, Senior. Lin Yi quickly thanked him. Then, before the West Mountain Patriarch could react and attack again, he quickly used the super butterfly microstep to escape. Even if he knew that it was useless, and the other party would inevitably catch up with him in an instant like before, he still had to escape. He could not just give up like this. Sure enough, although the West Mountain Patriarch, who had just been injured by the backfire, was still a little shocked, it was impossible for him to let Lin Yi escape. Lin Yi had only escaped for a moment, and the West Mountain Patriarch's iconic black mist appeared on top of his head again. However, perhaps because of the lesson he had just learned, the West Mountain Patriarch did not immediately take action. Instead, he calmly re-examined Lin Yi. This was an excellent material for a trump card puppet. Even if he suffered some internal injuries, he did not want to rashly kill Lin Yi because it was easy to damage his body. If this caused him to be unable to refine a trump card puppet, it would be a great loss. The best way was still to use the soul-hooking hand to directly erase Lin Yi's consciousness like just now. That was the most ideal way to capture materials. However, before that, he had to first observe and find a good opportunity. Otherwise, if he suffered another inexplicable backfire of divine sense, then the West Mountain Patriarch would not be able to bear it. It was a pity that, for a person with a strong will like Lin Yi, after losing his mind once, it was easier said than done to break through his mental defense a second time in a short period of time. This required great patience and deterrence. However, the West Mountain Patriarch did not lack these two things. As long as he could successfully refine a trump card puppet, not to mention chasing after Linny for half a day, it did not matter even if it took a year and a half. Anyway, the last thing a cultivator lacked was time. Linny fled desperately all the way, but from beginning to end, he could not get rid of the West Mountain Patriarch's control. Soon he had reached the south bank, and further ahead was the vast sea. There's no other way. Linny gritted his teeth and immediately prepared to turn west. While the West Mountain Patriarch was still playing the cat and mouse game, he could only try to see if he could lead this guy to the center of the group of people and let the two groups of people fight each other. However, just as Linny was about to turn, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Jump down!" What? Linny was shocked. Before he had time to consider the pros and cons of jumping into the sea, his body had already reacted instinctively. He obeyed the ghost's command and jumped into the sea without hesitation. Kiki, you think jumping into the sea can get rid of the Patriarch's divine sense lock? You are too naive. The West Mountain Patriarch saw this and raised a pair of green eyebrows, the corner of his mouth full of ridicule. It was true that the sea fog did have the effect of isolating the divine sense, but first, the sea fog was not thick at this time, and the isolation effect was far from strong enough to make the West Mountain Patriarch helpless. Second, even when the sea fog was at its thickest, with the strength of the West Mountain Patriarch's divine sense, as long as the distance between them was not more than 5 miles, it was still impossible for Linny to escape from the palm of his hand. Although it was early summer, the sea was still cold to the bone. Linny deliberately used genuine chi to protect his body, but he could not help but shiver. His whole body was crazily covered with layers of goosebumps. If ordinary people dared to jump down like this, no matter how good they were in the water, they would be frozen alive. R 1152. Chapter 4510. If it was just swimming in the sea, Linny would not have a problem. As long as he operated his genuine chi, he could maintain his body temperature. The space in the jade pendant could not only continuously replenish his genuine chi, but also ensure the supply of oxygen. In this way, Linny could stay in the sea for 10 days and half a night without a problem. However, since the sea could not stop Linny, naturally it could not stop West Mountain Old Sect, the evil cultivator giant. To think that he could get rid of West Mountain Old Sect by hiding in the sea was tantamount to a fool's talk. Even if he was deceiving himself, there was always a limit. What's more, the sea was not like the ground. Even if he could calmly deal with the sea, he still had to face all kinds of unexpected dangers, such as sea beasts. Due to its proximity to the South Continent, the sea beasts of the Spirit Beast clan did not interfere with each other. Most of them would not stay in the South Continent Sea. However, there were always exceptions. There were always some sea beasts that would wander in the South Continent Sea. Since they dared to come to the exclusive territory of the Spirit Beast clan, they naturally had one thing in common, and that was their strength must be very strong. Linny was truly unlucky today. He'd been hunted down by an elder of the West Mountain sect early in the morning, and now that he'd escaped into the sea, he just so happened to provoke an extremely dangerous existence, a ghost lightning ray that had been lurking at the bottom of the sea, waiting for its prey. Compared to other giant sea beasts that were hundreds of feet long, the ghost ray was very petite. From head to tail, it was less than 5 feet, very mini and pocket-sized. Of course, giant sea beasts were too big a target, and the South Continent Sea, especially the offshore sea, was not deep. If they dared to come over, they would be immediately detected by the Spirit Beast clan and human cultivators. Therefore, the sea beasts that really swam in the South Continent Sea were mostly small existences like the ghost ray. However, it was only small in size. For a terrifying existence like the ghost ray that could not be measured by common sense, if it really fought in the sea, not to mention the gold core stage masters, even the Yuanying stage masters would only be courting death. At least the profound ascending stage masters had the capital to fight it. A dark purple arc flashed in the sea. The ghost ray, which was buried in the sand and stones in a semi-dormant state, suddenly woke up the moment Lin Yi jumped into the water, and then, like a ghost, silently chased after him. The ghost lightning ray was a pure carnivorous sea beast, limited by its size. Although its appetite was not as astonishing as other sea beasts, which could easily eat tons of meat, it was extremely picky about the quality of its prey. The stronger the creature, the more it liked. It would be best if the prey was a powerful human cultivator. Not only was the meat tender, but it could also increase its strength with each bite. For the ghost lightning ray, it was a delicacy made in heaven. If he wanted to hunt human cultivators, the South Sea was obviously the best choice. Just like what was happening right now, there would always be prey that would walk right into the trap. The ghost ray was silent, but extremely fast. Lin Yi had just entered a completely unfamiliar environment, and at the same time he had to be careful of the West Mountain Elder. He was completely unaware of the danger coming from below. Fortunately, the Jade Pendant's warning function had not failed. The Jade Pendant's urgent warning sounded in his head, and Lin Yi's already tense nerves suddenly became even more nervous. He thought that the West Mountain Elder had caught up, and immediately sped up to escape. Unfortunately, he was underwater, and the super butterfly microstep had lost its effect. If he wanted to move, he could only rely on swimming. However, this speed was really not complimentary. Although Lin Yi's swimming ability was not bad, it was only slightly better than ordinary people. Without special training, it was impossible to move as freely as on the ground. However, although Lin Yi's speed was slow, the ghost ray that was pouncing up from below was not slow. As extremely dangerous, dark, purple electric arcs constantly streaked past his body, Lin Yi finally realized the huge ghost face that was rapidly approaching below, and his scalp went numb. The reason why it was called the ghost ray was because, from above, its back looked like a huge, hideous ghost face. It was like a death notice because when a human cultivator saw this ghost face, it meant that he was not far from death. At this moment, Lin Yi's mood was dull and instantly sank to the bottom. He really did not look at the almanac when he went out today. Once a person's back was cold, even drinking cold water would get stuck in the gaps between the teeth. This was a living portrayal, although he had never seen the ghost ray before. Judging from the dangerous aura it emitted, this strange and evil creature was definitely not easy to deal with. Not to mention that he was being chased by the West Mountain Elder. Even under normal circumstances, Lin Yi might not have the confidence to deal with the ghost ray. After all, they were in the water. The ghost ray was not as patient as the West Mountain Elder. After staring at Lin Yi, it immediately launched an attack. Countless frightening, dark, purple electric currents spread out from the ghost face on its back. At first glance, it looked messy, but upon closer inspection, one would find that these electric currents formed a three-dimensional cage, trapping Lin Yi alive. At the same time, the ghost ray's long, black, slender tail suddenly stabbed at Lin Yi's back from an extremely tricky angle. This was a true sneak attack expert, and its speed was so fast that even Lin Yi's super butterfly microstep could not match up to it. Especially in the water, such speed could be called invincible. The Jade Pendant's alarm sounded, and Lin Yi finally reacted in the nick of time. Disregarding the cost, he used all his genuine qi, causing his body to move a small step in an instant. The ghost ray's creepy long tail almost pierced Lin Yi's ear. Although it did not graze him, the fierce water flow left a long, narrow wound on Lin Yi's cheek. It was a ghastly sight. Missing its attack, the ghost ray let out a strange cry, and the purple electric cage trapping Lin Yi rapidly tightened. It seemed that it was ready to electrocute Lin Yi alive. The ghost ray's most powerful weapon was naturally the terrifying electric current it emitted. If measured by the units of the mortal world, its strength was at least hundreds of millions of volts, enough to electrocute any Yuanying stage expert alive. unless it was absolutely necessary. The ghost ray would not use electricity to kill, because it would destroy the prey's flesh. Therefore, its first attack was to trap the prey in the purple electric cage, and then use its long tail to kill the prey. However, Lin Yi had dodged this attack, so it could only resort to this. Even if the meat was a little burnt, it was better than letting the prey escape. This was the ghost ray's hunting strategy. The purple electric cage rapidly tightened from all directions, and this time, even genuine qi could not save Lin Yi. Before he even came into direct contact with the purple electric, Lin Yi's body had already fallen into a state of paralysis. No matter how much he stimulated it with genuine qi, he could not alleviate it. Lin Yi could not help but smile bitterly. He had not escaped from the tiger's den, but had fallen into the wolf's den. This time he was really dead. R 1152. Chapter 45:11. He had risked his life to avoid dying in the hands of the West Mountain Elder, only to end up as food for a ferocious sea beast. He was really unlucky. If this was not a sea beast, but a spirit beast, then there would be nothing to be afraid of. With Ghost Thing in charge, basically all spirit beasts would have to show some respect to this top elder of the spirit beast clan. But the problem was that this ghost ray was a pure-blooded sea beast. Although sea beasts and spirit beasts were both ferocious beasts, the two were completely different. They were not of the same system, nor were they of the same organization. The sea beasts would not care about some *T spirit beast elder. Helpless, Lin Yi thought that he was going to die here. Suddenly, a sneer sounded beside him, and the figure of the West Mountain Elder appeared in the rapidly tightening purple electric cage. His body was surrounded by a Jinchi shield, which kept the seawater out and also blocked the purple electric cage. "Kiki, I want to see where you can escape to, why don't you?" Halfway through his sentence, the West Mountain Elder realized something was wrong. After taking a look at the purple electric cage, his triangular eyes suddenly fell on the ghost ray below. He frowned and said, "What the hell is this?" Lin Yi's expression suddenly became very strange. This was not a ghost. It was still in the space of the jade pendant. At the same time, the ghost face on the back of the ghost ray suddenly changed, making an indescribable noise. It was unknown whether it was expressing joy or shock. It probably did not expect that a prey would suddenly appear. The purple electric cage suddenly became even more dazzling. The intensity of the electric current more than doubled, and was slowly nibbling away at the West Mountain Elder's Jinchi shield. At this rate, the West Mountain Elder and Lin Yi would inevitably become food for the ghost ray. Lin Yi looked at the West Mountain Elder calmly. He was already in a hopeless situation, and he was able to accept the situation calmly. It was the sudden appearance of the guy beside him that gave him a chance to live. He had been trying his best to escape from the West Mountain Elder's palm, but he didn't expect that he would become a grasshopper on a rope. He couldn't help but sigh at the irony of fate. "Humph, you dare to be arrogant in front of me? Evil creature, you're courting death." The West Mountain Elder was not afraid in the face of such a desperate situation. With a sneer, he clenched his fist, and a cloud of black mist immediately covered the ghost lightning ray. The strange noises that filled the surrounding sea suddenly became very sharp and short. At the same time, there was a faint sound of bones and flesh being crushed. A moment later, the purple electric cage that trapped the two suddenly collapsed. Countless dark, purple electric currents dissipated into the vast sea. At the same time, the black fog that enveloped the ghost ray dissipated. The vicious ghost ray had now been melted into a pool of thick blood. Lin Yi sucked in a cold breath as he looked at the West Mountain Elder with even more fear and wariness in his eyes. Such a ferocious sea beast was killed just like that, with one turn of his hand and another turning of his hand into rain. The strength of this mountain opening period evil practitioner was truly frightening, so powerful that it made one's hair stand on end. "Jia, this is a good thing." It's shameful to waste it. The West Mountain Elder was not afraid that Lin Yi would take the opportunity to escape. He sucked the stinky blood on the spot and swallowed it. Even with Lin Yi's strong nerves, he was so disgusted that he almost vomited. Taking advantage of the time when the West Mountain Elder was swallowing the blood, Lin Yi hurriedly used all his genuine qi to try to escape from this terrible monster. Escape? Where can you escape to in front of me? The West Mountain Elder sneered. As he continued to swallow the blood, he locked the position of Lin Yi with his divine sense. As long as he could perceive the position, Lin Yi would never be able to escape from his hands. Although the speed in the water was not as fast as on the ground, Lin Yi used all his genuine qi to escape hundreds of feet away in the blink of an eye. Although he was trying his best to escape, his heart was at a loss, because he really did not know how to escape from the West Mountain Elder's hands. This feeling of powerlessness made Lin Yi feel deeply frustrated. This was something that had never happened before. In the past, no matter what kind of dangerous situation he encountered, even if he was only a step away from death, Lin Yi at least knew what to do, how to fight, and there was no room for hesitation. But this time was different. Faced with the pursuit of a giant evil cultivator in the opening mountain period, Lin Yi was really helpless. With his current strength and means, he could not see any possibility of getting rid of the opponent. Even if there was a slim chance, no matter how slim it was, Lin Yi could stake it all on one throw. Unfortunately, there was not even a slim chance of survival. Just as Lin Yi was at a loss, a regular rumbling sound came from not far ahead. The originally calm sea suddenly became turbulent, condensed into countless visible torrents, and quickly gathered in front. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. With the ghost ray as a lesson, he thought that he had encountered some powerful sea beast. He was about to change direction to avoid it, but suddenly the ghostly thing's voice sounded in his mind. "It's here, rush in." Huh, rush in? Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. Since the ghostly thing had said so, even if it seemed to be extremely dangerous ahead, he could only bite the bullet and do as he was told. After all, there was no other way out now. If he followed the ghostly thing's instructions, he might be able to survive in the face of death and fight for the last chance of survival. Without any hesitation, Lin Yi immediately took advantage of the torrent beside him, and his whole body rushed to the unknown ahead like a swordfish. His speed was almost comparable to the super butterfly microstep. This guy is really fast at escaping. Feeling that Lin Yi's position was rapidly moving away, the face of the West Mountain Elder, who was still swallowing blood in the same place, changed. Although he was confident that Lin Yi could not escape from his palm, in this vast sea, if Lin Yi escaped more than 5 miles, even with his divine sense, it would be difficult for him to locate Lin Yi's position, and it would be troublesome. This was a torrent vortex. At this time, Lin Yi finally saw the existence in front of him clearly. It was not a ferocious sea beast at all, but a torrent vortex that was like a giant tornado. The unparalleled suction force sucked everything around it into it, and then it was all crushed into pieces. Looking at this incomparably frightening scene, Lin Yi could not help but be dumbfounded. First it was the West Mountain Elder, then it was the ghost ray, and now it was a torrent vortex. Which great god did I offend today? Did I offend the king of sea beasts, the merman too? However, Lin Yi immediately thought that whether it was after jumping into the sea and encountering the ghost ray or now encountering the torrent vortex, there was a common premise, and that was to listen to the ghostly thing's instructions. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and rush in. Do you want to stay and wait for death? The ghostly thing's voice sounded in his mind again. R1152. Chapter 4512. Senior, have I offended you recently? Lin Yi suddenly asked with a strange face. No, why? The ghost was baffled by the question. Oh, then I'm relieved. Lin Yi took a deep breath and then suddenly rushed into the torrent vortex. In the eyes of ordinary people, This was tantamount to seeking death. Lin Yi also felt so, because even with his gold core stage master's body, he could not withstand the huge force of the vortex. However, he had no choice now. He tried his best to protect his body with innate chi, and he could hold on in the torrent vortex as long as he could. Sure enough, as soon as Lin Yi entered the vortex, a terrible strangling force immediately came around him, and it was about to tear Lin Yi into pieces. Fortunately, Lin Yi had innate chi to protect his body, and at the same time he used a raging fire 8 trigram palm to fight against it, so he finally escaped. He thought that this strangling force would be endless, but after Lin Yi successfully survived the first wave, he found that the pressure on his body suddenly reduced. His whole body felt like he had entered the eye of the vortex, and he could not feel the strangling force at all. Instead, it seemed that he had entered a fast lane and was quickly sent far away by a huge torrent. In order to escape, he actually rushed into the vortex. Is this guy crazy? At this time, the West Mountain Elder had already caught up. He knew that Lin Yi was in the vortex, but he did not dare to enter. Even if he was comparable to the evil cultivator of the opening mountain period, after all, he was still immortal. It was easy for him to kill a few sea beasts, but if he fought against heaven and earth, then it was hard to say. Although the torrent vortex in front of him was not so heaven-defying, and its momentum was not even as strong as Lin Yi's previous super bomb. However, the West Mountain Elder knew that since the two were different, Lin Yi's super bomb was, after all, human power. It would soon disappear, but the torrent vortex in front of him was the power of heaven and earth. Although it did not look so terrible now, once it was triggered by some kind of chi, the power would be infinitely magnified, and at that time the West Mountain Elder would only be able to die. The higher the level of strength, the more often they cherished their life, and the more they did not dare to take risks. This was a common problem for most people, and the West Mountain Elder was no exception. But it was absolutely impossible for him to let Lin Yi go. After all, Lin Yi killed 2 of his disciples, and he was a rare trump card material. How could he let him go? He couldn't advance, but he couldn't retreat either. He couldn't help but feel regretful. He shouldn't have swallowed the blood and taken Lin Yi down first, and things wouldn't have been like this. Drifting in the vortex, Lin Yi, who had begun to get used to the darkness and turbidity, suddenly felt that the front was suddenly clear, and his whole body was thrown out by the torrent vortex. Although he was still in the water was obviously much clearer than the seawater just now. It was not as cold as before, and it was calm, giving people the feeling that they had suddenly arrived at a paradise. But at this time, Lin Yi did not feel like he had survived a disaster, because he did not know where he was, and he did not know if he had gotten rid of the West Mountain Elder. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go up. The ghost urged in Lin Yi's mind. Go up. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but he did not hesitate and directly followed the ghost's instructions. However, when he finally swam to the surface, he was shocked by the scene around him. There was a dense and lush primeval forest around him. At this moment, Lin Yi was no longer in the vast sea, but a large lake. No wonder the water quality was different from before. It was really a different world. Senior, what is this place? Caught in a torrent vortex, he was washed from the sea to a forest lake. Even Lin Yi could not help but feel strange. Obviously, all this was within the ghost's expectation. Otherwise, it would not have asked Lin Yi to jump into the sea, nor would it have asked Lin Yi to rush into the torrent vortex to seek his own death. South Island. The ghost's tone was a little complicated, and it explained to Lin Yi the South Sea area and the mainland of the South Island are connected by water veins. Many sea areas have a special whirlpool waterway that connects to the inland lake of the South Island. As long as you can enter the whirlpool waterway, you can quickly arrive there. So amazing? That's quite convenient. But why have I never heard of such a shortcut? Lin Yi was a little surprised. He had stayed in the sea area of the South Continent for a long time, but it was not a short time either. In particular, he had wandered around the Lufing Forest, but he had never heard of the Whirlpool Waterway. He only knew that it was not easy to enter the South Island. The ubiquitous miasma almost completely isolated the South Island from the surrounding sea area. Only at certain times could one come in through a special teleportation formation. Apart from that, he had never heard of such a convenient shortcut as the Whirlpool Waterway. Otherwise, there would be no need for so many people to line up to send spiritual jades to the teleportation formation. After all, the price of one teleportation was very high. These whirlpool waterways are the top secrets of our spirit beast clan. Only a few top elders and a small number of spirit beasts know about it. Most of the other spirit beasts don't know about it, let alone those human cultivators. Even if someone knows about it, he has to be silenced. After all, it's related to the safety of the entire spirit beast clan in the South Sea area. If someone casually enters the inland of the South Sea area, what will happen? The ghost thing said disapprovingly. The whirlpool waterway was only discovered by chance, and not every whirlpool had a hidden waterway. If one randomly found a whirlpool in the South Sea area and went into it, 99% of the people would be strangled alive. If one did not know the distribution of the whirlpool waterway clearly, who would dare to go into it rashly? What was more, many whirlpool waterways were one-way passages. Even if one entered the South Island smoothly, how could one get out? Perhaps one would not be able to return. Even the most courageous human cultivator would not dare to take this risk. Hearing the word silencing, Lin-Yi could not help but shiver. He smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, I'm also a human cultivator. You won't kill me too, will you? You're killing without teaching. Tisk tsk boy, are you afraid?" The ghost thing laughed strangely and then said, "Don't worry. You're one of us. Besides, am I such an unreasonable person?" "Of course not," Lin-Yi answered without thinking, but he added in his heart, "because you're not a human at all. I would never do something as unreasonable as punishing without teaching. I've always taught before punishing," the ghostly thing said with a straight face. Lin-Yi broke out in a cold sweat. Anyway, he would be killed if he didn't discipline or teach. What was the difference between the two? R1152. Chapter 45:13. Lin-Yi swam towards the shore as he talked to the ghost. After all, he'd only be able to move freely once he was on land, and he'd be able to use his full strength. It was much better than being restricted in the water. Finally returning to the ground, Lin-Yi could not help but let out a sigh of relief. The feeling of being trapped in the water disappeared, and he regained his confidence. What surprised Lin-Yi was that although this place was the South Island, there was no thick miasma covering it, and there was no trace of the miasma layer on the top. It was fresh and natural, like a paradise. "Senior, why is there no miasma here? Is it the season when the miasma dissipates again?" Lin-Yi suddenly felt strange. He didn't notice this in the water before. It was not until he came ashore that he realized it. He had prepared to isolate the miasma with true qi in advance, but he found that there was nothing. That's not it. Although many places in the South Continent are covered by miasma all year round, there are also many places without miasma. It's just that most of them are inland and the gathering places of the spirit beasts. Human cultivators outside can't enter, so they don't know about it. The ghost explained. "I see." Lin-Yi suddenly nodded. He thought that the South Continent was really a mysterious place of the spirit beasts. The outside world knew very little about it. Even the human cultivators in the South Sea area, who were close to the South Continent, knew most of the South Continent at the level of passers-by. There were probably very few people who really knew the inside story. Lin-Yi carefully observed the surrounding environment and finally had a chance to treat his internal injuries. This time, in order to avoid the pursuit of the West Mountain Elder, he accidentally escaped to the inland of the South Continent. He had to think about what to do next. However, before he could breathe evenly, the warning sound of the jade pendant suddenly sounded again. At the same time, a cloud of black mist rushed out of the mirror-like lake. The familiar sneer suddenly made Lin Yi's face change. The West Mountain Elder actually chased him to this place. Boy, you're really brave. You even dare to go into this kind of torrent vortex? I didn't expect it. It turns out that there is another mystery in it. But do you think you can escape from my palm like this? It's really whimsical and wishful thinking. The West Mountain Elder was floating in the air, and his face was full of pride. Logically speaking, as an evil cultivator who was comparable to the existence of the mountain opening period, he had spent so much time and effort to chase Lin Yi, a master of the gold core stage. However, the West Mountain Elder felt an indescribable sense of accomplishment at this moment. If he'd been scared by the whirlpool just now, Lin Yi would have been able to escape his clutches completely. He'd have to return empty-handed, and that'd be the laughingstock of everyone. But now, the West Mountain Elder gritted his teeth and chased him. Lin Yi's previous efforts were all in vain. His fate had already been determined in advance. He would inevitably be refined into a puppet by the West Mountain Elder. As for whether he could become a trump card puppet, it depended on his luck. Of course, even if he could become a trump card puppet, it was really not good luck for Lin Yi, because no matter what, he would end up the same. His consciousness would be completely erased by the West Mountain Elder, and there would be no more Lin Yi in the world. He thought that he had survived the disaster with great difficulty, but he didn't expect it to be an empty joy. This kind of ups and downs came too fast. Lin Yi was really speechless. Even the torrent vortex couldn't get rid of him. This evil cultivator of the mountain opening period was really haunting him. There is a swamp 3 miles south. Escape there. The ghost thing reminded in his mind. There was a clear surprise in his tone. It was really unexpected that the West Mountain Elder could chase him to such a place. Lin Yi immediately performed the super butterfly micro-step with all his strength. Before the West Mountain Elder made a move, he quickly ran south according to the ghost thing's instructions. It was taboo to run quickly in the primeval forest, especially since this was the base camp of the Spirit Beast clan. If he was not careful, he would disturb the ferocious existence that he couldn't provoke. However, Lin Yi had no other choice now. He could only take the risk. What's more, Lin Yi was eager to provoke a heaven-defying spirit beast that could compete with the giant of the mountain opening period. As the saying went, 2 tigers cannot share one mountain. At that time, the West Mountain Elder would inevitably become its first target, because the threat of this giant of the mountain opening period evil cultivator was far above Lin Yi. Only when the 2 tigers fought, Lin Yi had a chance to fish in troubled waters. Of course, Lin Yi's little plan couldn't be hidden from the experienced West Mountain Elder. His face suddenly showed a bit of killing intent. In order to perfectly capture a trump card puppet material, he really didn't want to hurt Lin Yi's body. But there must be a premise, which was that he wouldn't encounter any unexpected danger. In the Devil Cold Sea area, even all the sea areas of the South Continent, with the strength of the West Mountain Elder, he could be unscrupulous. As long as he had the patience, it didn't matter if he spent a year and a half on Lin Yi. However, it was different here. The moment he rushed out of the water just now, West Mountain Elder had already realized that this was the South Island of the South Continent. It was true that the evil cultivators of the mountain opening stage were almost invincible existences, but the Spirit Beast clan was also full of powerhouses. If he were to cause a ruckus here alone and attract the top existences of the Spirit Beast clan, even the West Mountain Old Sect Master would suffer greatly, and his life might even be in danger. Safety first. If he really provoked someone that he shouldn't provoke, West Mountain Elder could only bear the pain and kill Lin Yi. Even if he couldn't refine a trump card puppet, it was better than being trapped in this dangerous place of the South Continent with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Lin Yi's perception was so sharp that he instantly noticed the killing intent emitted from West Mountain Elder. His heart couldn't help but skip a beat. The biggest crisis was coming. Lin, he was not stupid. He knew that he could escape from West Mountain Elder for so long because the other party didn't want to hurt his body. Once this restriction was gone, it would be really not enough to kill him even if he had a few lives. In the blink of an eye, Lin he had escaped to the swamp that the ghost thing mentioned. It looked not much different from other dense forests, but it smelled fishy. If any creature dared to step on it, they would be trapped and buried alive in minutes. Roll in the mud, then escape to the east. The ghost thing's reminder came one after another. Without saying anything, Lin he did as he was told. After rolling around the edge of the swamp, he immediately ran to the east, ignoring the pungent smell of the mud. How could this be? At this moment, West Mountain Elder was about to descend on Lin Yi's head, but he suddenly frowned. Just a moment ago, Lin Yi actually suddenly disappeared from his divine sense. Chapter 45:14. The West Mountain Old Master was shocked. Even if there was a sea mist that isolated the divine sense, as long as the distance was within 5 miles, it was impossible for Lin Yi to escape the perception of his divine sense. What's more, there was neither sea mist nor miasma in front of him. Divine sense was clearly unimpeded in all directions. How could he inexplicably lose track of Lin Yi's whereabouts? Without much hesitation, the West Mountain Old Master quickly increased his altitude, trying to find Lin Yi's figure by relying on his eyesight. After all, if Lin Yi really escaped under his eyes, he would become a laughing stock. However, in front of him was a primeval forest, lush and dense. As far as the eye could see, there were tall and dense treetops. It was impossible to see the situation on the ground with just one's eyesight. The phrase, looking into the distance from a high vantage point, was not applicable here. Left with no other choice, the elder couldn't care less about his image as a hegemon of the evil sect anymore. He finally let go of his pride and ran into the forest, searching like a madman. He destroyed a huge part of the forest with a wave of his hand, determined to find Lin even if he had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Listening to the huge movement made by the West Mountain Old Master not far away, Lin could not help but be overjoyed. Provoking the West Mountain Old Master was a very dangerous thing. But the other party's reaction also showed that he finally had a chance of survival. Before this, he had been on tenterhooks, fearing that the West Mountain Old Master would suddenly appear above his head again. Don't worry, this swamp mud has no other use, but it is extremely effective in isolating divine sense. The evil cultivator's divine sense can't lock onto you, so naturally he can't suddenly appear like before. The ghost laughed. Swamp mud has such a great use. You really can't judge a book by its cover. No wonder Senior made me roll in the swamp mud. If I knew this earlier, I would have brought more back. Maybe it will come in handy in the future. Lin reacted and could not help but sigh, although it was still stinky and pungent compared with the effect of completely isolating divine sense. A little smell was completely tolerable. His body was covered with a layer of swamp mud. To a certain extent, it was equivalent to wearing an invisibility cloak. It was much harder to hide from one's divine sense than to hide from one's eyes. In the eyes of a knowledgeable person like Lin Yi, this stinky swamp mud was a true treasure. Its value was definitely not lower than those natural treasures. It was just that it looked a little more unique when used. Kid, you really don't mind being dirty. The ghostly thing laughed strangely and reminded him, this kind of swamp is everywhere. If you want, you can put it back at any time. But now it's more important for you to escape. Although you can't directly use your divine sense to lock on him, that evil cultivator won't let you go so easily. If he catches up to us again, then even I won't be able to help. Thank you for your reminder, Senior. Lin Yi's heart trembled. The commotion behind him was getting closer and closer. The West Mountain Old Master was obviously crushing and destroying everything along the way. Without saying a word, he immediately broke into a run. At this moment, looking from a high altitude, with a forest lake as the center, it could clearly be seen that a large area of the primeval forest was rapidly destroyed. The West Mountain Old Master was attacking indiscriminately from all directions. But even so, his speed was much faster than Lin Yi's super butterfly microsteps. It was really not a trivial matter when the evil cultivator of the mountain opening period went crazy. After all, this was the territory of the Spirit Beast clan. The West Mountain Old Master didn't want to make such a big movement. A strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its territory. If he really angered the Spirit Beast clan, he would not be able to bear the consequences. But in order to find Lin Yi, he was willing to pay any price. Even if he lost the opportunity to refine the ace puppet, he couldn't let Lin Yi escape so easily. Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked. If this continued, he would be found by the West Mountain Old Master again. At that time, he wouldn't even know how he died. This was the difference in strength. Even with the mud to isolate the divine sense, even with the exquisite super butterfly microsteps, it was still difficult to escape the pursuit of the West Mountain Old Master. This kind of powerlessness and frustration was enough to destroy anyone's will. However, under the huge pressure, Lin Yi's heart was filled with an extreme desire for strength. At this moment, there was only one thing in his mind: become stronger, become stronger. If he was not at the peak of the middle stage of gold core, but at the peak of the middle stage of nascent soul, then it would not be difficult to escape. If he went further and reached the peak of the middle stage of profound ascension, then not to mention self-protection, perhaps he would have the strength to kill the West Mountain Old Master. Why did he have to escape in such a sorry state? In the end, Lin Yi's current strength was far from enough in front of these top masters. Of course, this was all in the future. If he couldn't escape the current situation, all his obsession would be in vain. If he couldn't even save his life, what was the use of obsession? Seeing that the West Mountain Old Master was about to find Lin Yi, at this moment, a majestic and pure divine sense suddenly swayed out from Lin Yi. It was not the usual circular dispersion, but a straight line instantly connected to the West Mountain Old Master, and an unfathomable voice sounded in the depths of his soul. What evil spirit you dare to trespass into my South Continent territory? Do you want to start a war with my Spirit Beast clan? The ghostly thing's voice at the moment was not as casual as it usually was, but with an unparalleled, terrifying pressure, just like the overbearing temperament of a top elder. The West Mountain Elder, who was still fuming with rage, was suddenly startled when he was suddenly locked onto by such a powerful divine sense. Provoking a top-notch existence in the Spirit Beast clan was the worst thing that could have happened to him. Even a great evil cultivator like him would not dare to openly challenge the Spirit Beast clan, not to mention that this was the other party's base camp. I'm the West Mountain Old Master. Please forgive me for disturbing you. I have no intention of offending the Spirit Beast clan. I'm only here to hunt down a human cultivator who killed my personal disciple. Please do me a favor. The West Mountain Old Master immediately did not dare to wantonly destroy the Spirit Beast clan, and he immediately responded politely. From the beginning to the end, the West Mountain Old Master did not doubt the other party's strength at all. After all, the other party's divine sense was far more pure and powerful than his own, so its strength could naturally be imagined. After all, the big evil cultivator was still a human. He did not dare to rashly provoke such a terrifying existence. This was the territory of the Spirit Beast clan. Either get lost or die. The ghostly thing's tone became more and more domineering, as if it did not take the mountain opening stage big, evil cultivator seriously at all. Anger flashed across the West Mountain Old Master's face, but in the end, reason prevailed. He did not dare to fall out with this powerful hidden spirit beast on the spot. So after a cold snort, he could only turn around and leave resentfully. The ghostly thing and Lin Yi both heaved a sigh of relief. It was really pure luck that they were able to scare this big evil cultivator today. During the process just now, if there was a slight flaw, the consequences would be simply unimaginable. To be continued. Chapter 45:15. However, unexpectedly, the West Mountain Elder, who was about to leave, suddenly flashed toward the place where Linny was and looked around suspiciously. Although he could not rely on his divine sense to lock on, his keen intuition that had been cultivated for many years told him that there seemed to be a trace of a human's aura in this place. This human was undoubtedly Linny. "You're courting death." The ghostly thing's voice suddenly became fierce. Its divine sense that was locked on the West Mountain Elder suddenly turned into a sharp arrow and penetrated the divine sense emitted by the other party. Poof! The West Mountain Elder then spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the second time that his divine sense was injured and caused internal injuries. He immediately turned pale with fright and hurriedly fled, not daring to stay in this place any longer. Wah-yi-yi-ya. Ling-Yi Jr., just you wait. This time, I can't be bothered to deal with you. I hope you fall into the mouth of the spiritual beast as soon as possible. Even if the spiritual beast doesn't eat you, I'll definitely kill you in the future. The West Mountain Elder hurriedly left after saying these harsh words. He did not want to let Linny go, but the problem was that he was afraid of death. At the same time, behind a giant tree, less than 500 feet away from where he was just now, Lin-Yi, who was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, leaned on the tree trunk and sighed in fear. This old monster is really King difficult to deal with if it were not for the warning of the jade pendant, if it were not for Lin-Yi's performance, just now that exceeded his level and displayed the unprecedented extreme butterfly subtle steps. He would have become a corpse in the hands of the West Mountain Elder now. If I'm not in this ghostly state now, I'll kill as many of these crooked ways as they come. The ghostly thing could not help but feel a little scared. As the dignified top elder of the spiritual beast clan, he actually had to rely on a bluff to scare away an evil cultivator. Moreover, it was in the South Continent. This kind of thing really made him feel ashamed. "Senior, what should we do next?" Lin-Yi did not respond tactfully and asked the most important question. "There's nothing to do. I didn't want to come back. However, since I was forced to return this time, I might as well take a look around. I want to see just what that vermilion bird has done to the Spirit Beast clan, and just who is that new Spirit Beast monarch." The ghostly thing's voice was unfathomable. All right, Lin-Yi didn't feel scared at all. The South Continent was a dangerous place for human cultivators, but since he was able to save his life from the West Mountain Patriarch, it didn't seem to be a big deal to stroll around the territory of the spirit beasts. After all, there was a ghostly thing as a guide. Mo Lung Pier. A huge ship bearing the banner of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency finally left the harbor under the watchful eyes of the crowd. It had been a whole month since the South Continent Escort Agency Festival had ended. Chi Minyuan, Chi Wenhan, and Honest Chai, who was returning to Crescent City along the way, stood side by side on the deck of the huge ship, their expressions incomparably solemn. In order to inquire about Lin-Yi's whereabouts, they had stayed in Mo Lung City for a whole month, using all kinds of methods in the open and in the dark. In the end, there was still no news at all. They didn't even know if Lin-Yi was dead or alive, or where he had escaped to. It was as if he had completely evaporated from the face of the earth. However, what gave the crowd some comfort was that the West Mountain Patriarch hadn't appeared until now. Even though Lin-Yi was a golden core stage expert, the possibility of him escaping from the hands of the West Mountain Patriarch was extremely small. Even though the possibility of him escaping from the hands of the West Mountain Patriarch was minuscule, the crowd couldn't help but hold onto this last bit of hope. As long as they didn't see Lin-Yi's corpse, they believed that Lin-Yi was definitely still alive. This kind of thing couldn't be done by others, but it wasn't impossible for Lin-Yi, who had always produced miracles. Sigh. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency has become the new overlord of escort agencies. Wherever it is, that place is the center of the South Continent Sea region. From now on, the Mo Lung Sea region won't be so lively anymore. Looking at the flag of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, someone in the crowd at the pier sighed. I don't think so. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency is the #1 escort agency, didn't you hear about what happened on the day of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance meeting? The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was personally led by a mountain opening stage giant. How could the Heavens Equal Escort Agency compete with it? What a joke! Someone said disapprovingly, Sigh, you only know one thing but not the other. The West Mountain Patriarch is indeed the backer of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, but he disappeared on the spot in order to hunt down Ling E of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Therefore, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency didn't get any other benefits other than regaining its status as the #2 escort agency. Someone immediately retorted, That's right. I have a friend who is the representative of the Chamber of Commerce. I heard that after the incident that day, although the Dragon Boat Escort Agency regained its status as the #2 escort agency, no other Chamber of Commerce placed any orders with it. Everyone is still observing. Therefore, the title of the #2 escort agency is just an empty title, someone immediately revealed. Oh! Now that the rules of the 5 Great Escort Agency have changed, I heard that it has become the 6th Great Escort Agency. Was it head escort high of our 4 Seas Escort Agency suggestion? Someone asked. My ass, the 6th Great Escort Agency. That was just that Boundless Seas shameless suggestion to curry favor with the West Mountain Patriarch. In the end, as soon as the West Mountain Patriarch left, it was immediately rejected by the new overlord of the escort agency, Qiming Yuan. Guess what he said? What did he say? The surrounding people all pricked up their ears. Ever since the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance was established, there have always been the 5 Great Escort Agency. I've never heard of the 6th Great Escort Agency. The rules can't be broken so easily. Since the 4 Seas Escort Agency is the 6th Great Escort Agency, then we can only disqualify the Alliance Committee. This person imitated Qiming Yuan's tone and said, then does that mean the 4 Seas Escort Agency is excluded? TSK, falling from the overlord of the escort agency to the dust. Wouldn't Boundless Sea cry himself to death? Someone sighed. Nonsense, who asked him to use his cheap mouth to curry favor with West Mountain Elder Sect. That shameless face of his back then really makes people want to vomit. Now great he carried the Dragon Boat Escort Agency in, and his own 4 Seas Escort Agency was squeezed out. I bet Boundless Sea's intestines are green with regret. He might as well just be a bit more shameless and disqualify the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. In any case, he was the one who disqualified the 4 Seas Escort Agency. Another person sneered. He wouldn't dare do something like that even if you lent him 100 guts. If the West Mountain Patriarch comes back, no matter how many lives Boundless Sea has, it won't be enough. Everyone laughed. No matter what, this time the 4 Seas Escort Agency is probably not going to be able to rise again. Not only did it suddenly drop out of the 5 Great Escort Agency, I heard that it didn't even get many orders. From now on, it'll be nothing. Quite a few people shook their heads. To be continued. Chapter 45:16. Serves him right. I thought Boundless Sea was a righteous person, but I didn't expect him to be such a shameless person. He went back on his words and was the first to jump out and lick West Mountain's old master's boots. He really threw away the face of our cold devil city, someone sneered. That's right. This time his true nature has been exposed. Serves him right. Everyone expressed their disdain. This time, Boundless Sea had completely lost the support of the people. It would be difficult for him to even establish a foothold in the cold Devil Sea region. We're going back just like that? Chi Wen-han looked at the cold devil pier, which was getting further and further away. He punched the railing unwillingly. Brother Ling risked his life for our heaven's equal escort agency and made such a great contribution. In the end, he was hunted down by an evil cultivator and met with a tragic end. We could only watch helplessly without being able to help. How could we still have the face to be the overlord of this escort agency? Honest Chai glanced at Chi Wen-han and nodded his head. This young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a man of character. Young Hero Ling was right about him. Your father also wishes to continue staying behind to find out more news about young Hero Ling, but we've already waited for more than a month. If we continue wasting our time here, Velvet Arc City might end up in chaos, and young Hero Ling's efforts would be wasted. Chi Mingyuan sighed and patted Chi Wen-han's shoulder. Don't worry. Young Hero Ling is a virtuous man. I've already asked Old Song to send a large number of people here. As long as young Hero Ling's whereabouts are found, we will know immediately. It's the same for him to stay here. The Hong Merchant Association also has their own channels to look for news. I've already told them to do their best to look for news of young Hero Ling. I'm sure nothing will happen. Honest Chai comforted while praying for Lin Yi in his heart. Compared to the Chi father and son duo, he was actually more dependent on Lin. After all, he had never met Hong Zhong. Lin Yi could be considered his only backer in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Hong Zhong had only accepted him sincerely because of Lin Yi. If something really happened to Lin Yi, it would be a fatal blow to him. Yes, with the connections of your Hong Chamber of Commerce and my Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in the seas of the South Continent, it is enough to infiltrate every nook and cranny. Given time, it should not be difficult to find young Hero Ling. Chi Mingyuan nodded and turned to look at Chi Wen-han. Wen-han, do you know how to contact young Hero Ling's junior sister Huang? Junior Huang? Chi Wen-han was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Chi Mingyuan with a strange expression. Brother Ling has not even come to a conclusion yet, and my dad is already trying to salvage the situation by roping in Junior Huang, who has become the disciple of the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea. Young Hero Ling has 20% of the shares. This is something that he has exchanged for with his great contributions. Our Heaven's Equal Escort Agency will not go back on our word. We cannot not honor our promise just because young Hero Ling is no longer here. Therefore, to be safe, we should try to contact Junior's sister Huang first. When the time comes, we might as well transfer the 20% of the shares under her name. That way, we will be able to account to young Hero Ling. Chi Mingyuan said seriously. Chief Escort Chi is indeed righteous. Honest Chai nodded his head in approval. Huang Xiaotao was the only person that everyone had seen who had a relationship with Lin Yi. Furthermore, their relationship was very close. If Lin Yi were to really die, transferring the 20% of the shares to Huang Xiaotao would be the logical thing to do. From this point, Chi Mingyuan could be considered to be very generous. After all, 20% of the shares was not a small amount. If it was anyone else, they would be more than happy to swallow it back after Lin Yi dies. After all, Lin Yi did not have any children or disciples to inherit his inheritance. Logically speaking, once he dies, the 20% of the shares would naturally return to the agency's name, and no one would say anything about it. I really do not know how to contact Junior Sister Huang. I only know that she is in the Morning Star Academy in the Eastern Continent. Chi Wen-han could not help but shake his head. After all, he was not familiar with Huang Xiaotao. They had only met a few times, and they had not even spoken much to each other. Moreover, they were in the Eastern Continent, a place so far away. Then, let's keep it for now. We'll think of a way to contact her in the future. Chi Mingyuan muttered. After all, the Eastern Continent was not a place that anyone could casually go to. Even if he knew that the Morning Star Academy was in the High Forest Sea, even someone with Chi Mingyuan's strength did not have the qualifications to go there alone, not to mention his subordinates. Yes, Qi Wenhan nodded his head solemnly. Although he was the sole successor of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, he wholeheartedly approved of Qi Mingyuan's decision. Qi Mingyuan's decision might have been a little far-sighted, but Qi Wenhan's decision was purely out of friendship. This time, if Lin Yi really did not return, Qi Wenhan would not want to swallow the 20% of the shares. Instead, he would think of ways to compensate for it. This was in line with his temperament. With the halo of being the overlord of the Southern Continent's escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency returned to Weiwan City. The Weiwan Pier was bustling with people. Almost all the leaders of the various forces in the Weiwan Sea had gathered. Such a grand and lively scene had not been seen in Weiwan City for decades. The reason why so many leaders had gathered here was obvious. They wanted to establish a good relationship with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and leave a good impression on Qi Mingyuan, who was at the peak of his power. After all, he was the new overlord of the Southern Continent's escort agencies. His status was equivalent to the leader of the righteous in the Southern Continent's sea. In the future, his influence would not be small. Even if he could not be a friend, he definitely could not be an enemy. Therefore, even the local tyrants who once had grievances with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had prepared lavish gifts to express their goodwill. They wanted to use this opportunity to bury the hatchet. In contrast, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, which had already returned to Weiwan City a month ago, did not have such an ostentatious scene. Even if it had regained its title as the number 2 escort agency, and rumor had it that it had the support of West Mountain Elder, the problem was that West Mountain Elder was not present. Who knew if this evil cultivator giant would really come to the headquarters of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? If West Mountain Elder had really come to Weiwan City, then everyone present would naturally have to be respectful to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. As the saying went, when one was under someone else's roof, one had to lower one's head. However, before that, it was better to keep a respectful distance. After all, when there was no absolute power to deter others, the slogan that good and evil could not coexist was still very popular. In order to avoid public criticism, it was better not to have anything to do with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. This kind of thing would only bring harm and no good, and the people present were not fools. Long Kiba sat alone in the lobby of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency as he listened to the clamor of gongs and drums from the pier. These people were all sucking up to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, but they did not care about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency at all. Such an obvious difference in treatment, no matter who it was, would feel uncomfortable. R 1152. Chapter 45:17. Furthermore, in the past month, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's business was simply terrible. Let alone the title of number 2 escort agency, it was even worse than before. How could this be tolerated? In the end, it was all because of the West Mountain Old Sect. As a founding stage evil cultivator, he only chased after a mere Ling Yi. In the end, he never returned, and there was no news at all for an entire month. Long Kiba was really full of complaints now. He secretly cursed the old monster in his heart. Could it be that after killing Ling Yi, he couldn't be bothered with his Dragon Boat Escort Agency anymore? This was very possible. After all, after Wu Baoliang and Cheng Haonan died in Ling Yi's hands, his Dragon Boat Escort Agency and the West Mountain Old Sect no longer had any connection. There was indeed no need for the West Mountain Old Sect to come to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. However, this way Long Kiba and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would be in trouble. They were clearly being roasted on a fire. They would have a bad reputation of having secret dealings with evil cultivators. In the end, they did not gain any benefits at all. Instead, their business was deteriorating day by day. Long Kiba wanted to slap himself when he thought of these troublesome matters. Why did he choose to form an alliance with the Poison Eye mercenary group? Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many problems later on. Even if they couldn't obtain the title of number 2 escort agency, they could at least keep their business. At least they wouldn't be as empty as they were now. Such a huge dragon boat escort agency could not even receive a single order from morning till night. Everyone could only wait to starve with nothing to do. Long Kiba could only drown his sorrows in alcohol. The enthusiastic sound of gongs and drums outside made him even more annoyed. He suddenly roared, "Where the hell are all the people? It's so noisy outside. Don't they know to close the door?" Close the door? It doesn't sound like I'm welcome. A cloud of black fog suddenly condensed in the middle of the hall, and a strange old man with red hair and green eyebrows appeared. It was the West Mountain Old Sect. "Say, Senior, you're back?" Long Kiba was instantly shocked. He hurriedly stood up in surprise and joy, and respectfully said, "Long Kiba greets Senior West Mountain Old Sect. I was just annoyed by the noise outside just now. I'm not targeting you, Senior. Please don't take it to heart. I don't think you have the guts." The West Mountain elder snickered. Then his figure flashed, and he sat down in the main seat of the hall. Although he still looked so mysterious at first glance, there was a hint of fatigue between his brows that was difficult to conceal. "Men, quickly prepare the best banquet. This head escort leader wants to welcome Senior's arrival," Long Kiba hurriedly instructed. His face was filled with wild joy, and he looked forward to it very much. This time, the West Mountain Old Sect Master has finally arrived. I want to see how those snobbish people are going to deal with this. Everyone in the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was mobilized, and a table of first-class banquet was quickly prepared. Long Kiba sat at the end of the table and toasted West Mountain Ancestor without concealing his flattery. Even the people in the Dragon Boat Escort Agency had goosebumps when they heard this. However, West Mountain Ancestor happened to like this, and his words were much kinder to Long Kiba. Seeing that West Mountain Ancestor was almost satisfied, Long Kiba said tentatively, "Senior West Mountain, you killed Ling, this time not only to avenge Brother Wu and Brother Chung, but also to help the Dragon Boat Escort Agency get rid of a big threat. I thank you for your great kindness on behalf of the entire Dragon Boat Escort Agency." Lingy, hearing this name, West Mountain Ancestor's face suddenly turned cold, and he said with a somewhat unnatural expression, "Don't mention it. I was careless this time. I wanted to capture him alive and refine him into a puppet. I didn't expect that I would accidentally enter the South Island and be targeted by the top experts of the Spirit Beast clan. That brat escaped." "Ah, Ling Yi escaped to the South Island? How is that possible? I remember that there is no teleportation formation in Devil Lung City." Long Kiba couldn't help but be speechless. He was a native of the South Continent. Apart from those few teleportation formations, he didn't know that there was any other way to enter the South Island. "What, you even dare to question my words?" West Mountain Ancestor looked at Long Kiba with an unfriendly gaze. This was a common trait among evil cultivators. No, I don't have the guts. Senior, you are too serious. I just feel that it is unbelievable. Ling Yi is too lucky. He accidentally got the top experts of the Spirit Beast clan to avenge him. Otherwise, even 100 lives wouldn't be enough for him to die. Long Kiba was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat and quickly tried to salvage the situation. Humph, he was really lucky to escape to the South Island this time. However, it doesn't mean that he was lucky. With his insignificant strength, once he was discovered by the Spirit Beast clan, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape the fate of becoming their food. Therefore, he can be considered as a dead man. It's just that we can't see his corpse. West Mountain Ancestor's expression became a little more relaxed. Yes. Ling, you will definitely die this time. No matter how lucky he is, he won't be able to escape from the Spirit Beast clan's territory alone. Long Kiba nodded in agreement. That's for sure. We spent a lot of effort to get out of the South Island, and we were almost besieged by the experts of the Spirit Beast clan, let alone someone like Ling Yi. The West Mountain Elder Master clearly had a lingering fear as he spoke. If he wasn't entangled by the powerful spirit beasts on the South Island, he would have returned long ago with his strength. It wouldn't have taken him a month. West Mountain Ancestor could escape from the South Island unscathed, not only because of the powerful strength of the mountain opening stage, but also because of luck. If his luck was any worse, he, the evil cultivator, might have been buried in the South Island. At the end of the day, the South Island was the inviolable base camp of the Spirit Beast clan. Even if the Spirit Beast clan and human cultivators lived in harmony, no human cultivators were allowed to enter the South Island unless the Spirit Beast clan sent an invitation. Anyone who trespassed would be killed without mercy. Senior, now that Ling Yi is definitely dead, shouldn't we get rid of the people from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency as well? They're all Ling Yi's accomplices, and they're now the overlord of the South Island Escort Agency. Their power shouldn't be underestimated. As the saying goes, weeds will grow again if the roots are not removed. Long Kiba immediately shifted his hatred. Regardless of whether Ling Yi was dead or alive, it didn't matter to him. The key was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. This was the archenemy that his Dragon Boat Escort Agency had to get rid of. Otherwise, even with the West Mountain Old Sect master holding the fort, it could only be ranked second in name. You want me to deal with the Heavens Equal Escort Agency? West Mountain Ancestor glanced at Long Kiba. Yes. These blind clowns are really hateful, especially Qi Mingyuan, who claimed to be the leader of the righteous Tao. He kept saying that the righteous Tao and evil Tao can't coexist. He didn't take you seriously at all. We have to get rid of him. Long Kiba took the opportunity to instigate. To be continued. Chapter 4518. Long Kiba, you're up to no good. West Mountain Elder's face suddenly turned cold. No, I wouldn't dare. I'm telling the truth. Long Kiba was startled. He was in a hurry to get someone else to do his dirty work. But he forgot that West Mountain Elder was a shrewd person. He couldn't hide his dirty thoughts from him at all. The truth? Is Qi Mingyuan an idiot? Why would he provoke me? The West Mountain Old Master squinted at Long Kiba and said, I have no enmity with the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Why did you kill these people so recklessly? Do you think my life is too easy? Do you want to provoke the big shots of the righteous sects to cause trouble for me? Senior, please don't be angry. I didn't think it through. Long Kiba didn't dare to talk back to West Mountain Elder, so he could only sincerely admit his mistake. However, he kept cursing in his heart. A dignified opening stage evil cultivator giant doesn't even dare to destroy the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. What a coward. If word of this gets out, I'll be laughed at. It's better to be safe than sorry. I'm a famous figure in all the righteous sects on the Heavenly Island. I have to be careful with my every move. If I'm caught, the consequences will be unimaginable, West Mountain Elder said in a deep voice. At his level of strength, he had long passed the stage of recklessness. As the saying goes, a tall tree attracts the wind. He could be unscrupulous in West Mountain, but now that he was out of West Mountain, even in the chaotic South Continent Sea, he had to keep a low profile. After all, the saying that good and evil cannot coexist with each other was not as simple as it sounded. Killing was unavoidable, but it had to be done with a good reason. Shishan Old Master Huntinglin Edown was to avenge his 2 disciples. It was a matter of course. No one would think there was anything wrong with it. Even the righteous sects couldn't find fault with it. However, every debt has a debtor. If West Mountain Elder killed innocent people, other than Linny himself, he would also kill the entire Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Even if he was an opening stage evil cultivator giant and seemed to be invincible, Don't forget that the righteous sects also had opening stage evil cultivators, even if there weren't any in the South Continent Sea. There are always other places. Moreover, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was now publicly acknowledged as the leader of the righteous Tao in the South Continent Sea. If the West Mountain Old sect dared to destroy the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, it would be equivalent to challenging the entire righteous Tao on Heaven's Stage Island. If that really happened, it might be another time when the 6 major sects besieged Light Summit. How could the old and cunning West Mountain Elder do such a stupid thing that would bring trouble upon himself? Putting aside the fact that there was no enmity between him and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, even if there was a grudge between them, he would not have dared to attack them for no reason, given their current status. Yes, Senior is indeed farsighted. Compared to you, I am still too childish and impulsive. Long Kiba could only smile apologetically and try to curry favor with him. Then he probed with hope in his heart. Senior, you don't have any other matters this time, right? You must stay in our escort agency for a while, so that our juniors can have the opportunity to show their filial piety. Forget it. Since I've already said so, I'll give it to you. I might as well stay at your dragon boat escort agency for a period of time. West Mountain Elder nodded. This was the reason why he came here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come. Thank you, Senior. Long Kiba was overjoyed, and the stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. He hurriedly ordered, "Hurry up and prepare a room for Senior. Remember, it must be the best. If you dare to be negligent in this matter, I'll kill you all." Yes, everyone hurriedly answered. This was a room prepared for a founding stage evil cultivator. Even if they had 100 guts, they wouldn't dare to be negligent. I have something to say first. I promised to stay here, but it's not for nothing. West Mountain Elder suddenly said, "My cultivation requires a female in the nascent soul stage to cooperate with me. So, you have to find some female in the nascent soul stage for me. This is the minimum condition." Female in the nascent soul stage? Where can I find them? Long Kiba was instantly dumbfounded. There were not many female cultivators, and the higher the level, the rarer they were. Moreover, most of them were concentrated in the West Island. In the South Continent Sea, which was famous for its chaos, it was rare to see a few female cultivators in the Golden Core stage, let alone female cultivators in the nascent soul stage. Humph! If it was so easy to find, would I still need you? West Mountain Elder glanced at Long Kiba and curled his lips. Do you really think that you don't need to do anything and you can let me stay here for your dragon boat escort agency? How can there be such a good thing in the world? You're the head of an escort agency. You can't be so childish and naive, right? Senior, you're right. I'll do my best and won't let you down. Long Kiba wanted to cry but had no tears. Where could he find female cultivators in the nascent soul stage? Did he have to go all the way to the West Island to kidnap them? Even if he really dared to go to the West Island, it was impossible for him to capture female cultivators in the nascent soul stage alive. After all, he was only a master in the nascent soul stage. If he was lucky enough to meet one, he might not even be able to defeat her, let alone capture her alive. But now that things had come to this, how could Long Kiba dare to say no? It wasn't easy for him to get West Mountain Elder to stay here, but now that things had come to this, he said he didn't want him. Wasn't that just messing with West Mountain Elder? How many lives did he, Long Kiba, have? How dare he mess with an evil cultivator in the opening mountain period? Then I'll wait for your good news. The West Mountain Old Ancestor smiled with satisfaction. If he could really find a nascent soul female cultivator, it would be a piece of cake for him with his strength. However, he had too many misgivings. If he let Long Kiba collect them on his behalf, the risk would be much smaller. Even if he caused any trouble, he could let Long Kiba take the blame. Poor Long Kiba didn't know about this. In fact, even if he guessed West Mountain Elder's sinister intentions, he had no other choice. Since he decided to cooperate with West Mountain Elder, an evil cultivator in the opening mountain period, he was bound to pay a corresponding price while getting huge benefits. Taking the blame was just one of them. Long Kiba tried his best to flatter West Mountain Elder. Under his orders, the news that West Mountain Elder was in charge of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency spread like wildfire. Soon, it spread all over the streets and alleys. In just an hour, everyone in Way Arc City knew about it. For a moment, the limelight of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency overshadowed the grand return of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. It became the focus of everyone's discussion. After all, it was an evil cultivator in the opening mountain period, a super existence that the entire South Continent had to look up to. When the news reached the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Chi Mingyuan, Chi Wenhan, and the others couldn't help but be shocked. To be continued. Chapter 4519. This was good news for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, but it was bad news for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. If the West Mountain Elder was unhappy, he could easily wipe out the entire Heavens Equal Escort Agency. What would they do then? This kind of thing wasn't impossible. In fact, it was extremely possible. However, in the midst of their fear, other than the bad news of Shishan Elder being in charge of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, they finally heard a piece of good news. Lin Yi didn't die, at least not at the hands of Shishan Elder. That's great. Brother Ling did not disappoint us. I knew that anything that happened to him would not be strange. Ha 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 ha. Chi Wenhan was overjoyed. In comparison, the threat of the West Mountain Elder was completely ignored by him. Young Hero Ling is truly a rare genius. Even the West Mountain Elder could not do anything to him. This is really... Chi Mingyuan was overjoyed, but he could not help but be dumbfounded. The West Mountain Elder was an evil cultivator of the mountain opening stage, yet he failed to kill a golden core stage expert. If this did not come from the mouth of the West Mountain Elder, no one would believe it. To be able to escape the West Mountain Elder's pursuit is indeed worthy of celebration. However, young Hero Ling is currently trapped in the southern island. It is still very dangerous. Honest Chai, who rushed over after hearing the news, was still worried. Shopkeeper Chai, don't worry about this. Brother Ling is a virtuous person. Even the West Mountain Elder could not take his life. The spiritual beasts are the same. Let's just wait for him to return. Chi Wenhan, on the other hand, was full of confidence in Lin Yi. After witnessing so many miracles from Lin Yi, he couldn't help but worship Lin Yi blindly. He was almost treating Lin Yi as his idol. That's right, young Hero Ling has been to Lufeng Forest before and has the experience of surviving in the southern island. Who knows, he might be able to survive this time. We don't need to worry too much. Chi Mingyuan agreed. That's true. With young Hero Ling's strength, he will definitely be able to return safely. This time, I will definitely be able to return safely. Honest Chai nodded. The sudden appearance of the Western Mountains' old sect master had caused a huge commotion in Velvet Arc City at the beginning, causing everyone in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to be in a state of panic. After that, he did not do anything else. He merely stayed in the Dragon Boat Escort Agency and did not take a single step out of the agency. As time passed, the focus of the public gradually shifted away from the West Mountain Old Sect Master. It seemed that the appearance of this evil cultivator at the mountain opening period did not have much impact on Way Arc City. It was just that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's business had improved a little, that was all. However, even with the presence of the West Mountain Old Sect leader, the business of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency only recovered to its previous level and did not reach a particularly explosive level. In fact, most of the businesses that came to them were scattered businesses, and they could only earn a small profit. As for the long-term and huge orders like the Hong Chamber of Commerce, there was not a single one. Firstly, the The majority of these large orders from the Chamber of Commerce had been placed during the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance Conference that day. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency didn't get to eat the meat at that time. Now, it was destined that they could only drink some thin soup. Secondly, most of the Chamber of Commerce trusted the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. After all, it was the true overlord of the escort agencies. Its strength and reputation were top-notch, but it was hard to say for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Since they were related to evil cultivators, their reputation was naturally not good. Now that the West Mountain Old Sect leader was in charge, there was no doubt about their strength. The problem was, who could guarantee that the West Mountain Old Sect leader would always stay in the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? What if the Chamber of Commerce signed long-term contracts with them and the West Mountain Old Sect leader suddenly left one day? Wouldn't that be a huge loss for them? Merchants were born to pursue profits. If they couldn't see stable returns, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens for them to fork out large amounts of spiritual jades. Long Kiba, who was looking forward to surpassing the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, was obviously not satisfied with this result. He didn't expect that with the West Mountain Old Sect leader personally in charge, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's business would be in such a half-dead state. This was completely different from the hot situation he had expected. This enormous disparity simply caused Long Kiba to be depressed to the point of wanting to spit blood. After all, he'd been forced to search for nascent soul-stage female cultivators every single day these past few days. How could he endure such great pressure in exchange for such a small amount of benefits? However, no matter how depressed Long Kiba was, there was nothing he could do. After all, business was a matter of mutual consent. As an escort agency owner, he couldn't use the West Mountain Old Sect leader's name to go out and force those Chamber of Commerce to buy and sell, right? If he really caused an uproar, the first person to look for him would be the West Mountain Old Sect leader. This evil cultivator was determined to keep a low profile. Wasn't Long Kiba looking for trouble for him? Way Arc City returned to its usual peace. If there was really a difference, it would be that there were obviously more outsiders coming to the Way Arc waters. This was the central effect brought about by the overlord of the escort agency. In the past, everyone went to the Devil Cold Waters, but now it was the Way Arc waters' turn in the forest of the southern island, after the ghostly thing scared away the West Mountain Old Sect leader. Lin Yi stayed at the same place to rest and recuperate. After healing his injuries, he continued to move forward in the dense forest. Although it was a completely unfamiliar place with a competent guide like the ghostly thing, he didn't have to worry about getting lost. However, what made Lin Yi feel rather strange was that he had been walking in this dense forest for a whole 3 days and 3 nights, but he still hadn't encountered a single spiritual beast. This was the base camp of the spiritual beasts. Logically speaking, a powerful spiritual beast should be kicked out at any time. How could there not be a single spiritual beast? This didn't make sense. After all, even in the very edge of Lufeng Forest, traces of spiritual beasts could often be found. Now, according to the ghostly thing, this place was much closer to the core hinterland of the southern island than Lufeng Forest. If Lufeng Forest was said to be a remote mountain village, then this place was at least a junction between the city and the suburbs. However, this scene was a little too abnormal. Not only Lin Yi, but even the ghostly thing felt a little strange at this time. No matter how one looked at it, this indeed couldn't be considered normal. If the edge was so empty, it would make sense. However, after walking for 3 days and 3 nights, they were already deep in the hinterland, but it was still as dead as a ghost. It really didn't make sense. Senior, should we continue to walk in? Why don't we go back? I feel that this place is a little weird. Lin, he couldn't help but frown. There must be something wrong if something was abnormal, especially when this place was the base camp of the spiritual beasts. If they let their guard down, it would be fatal. Chapter 45:20. Lin knew very well that he must not be greedy or curious in a place like the South Island, because any one of them would lead to disaster and death. It's indeed abnormal. It seems like something big has happened. Let's go and take a look, the ghost said after a moment of hesitation. Okay. Lin did not object, although his rationality told him that it might be dangerous to go on like this. Since the ghost insisted on taking a look, of course he would accompany it to the end. After all, they were on the same side. Moreover, Lin could see that even though the ghost could not protect itself, it was still very concerned about the spirit beasts. It said that it did not want to go back to the spirit beasts, but it would unconsciously remember the slightest sign of trouble. To a certain extent, this senior spirit beast was actually quite arrogant. Lin continued on his way to the core area, but he was much more careful with every step he took. This place was supposed to be a place where powerful spirit beasts gathered, but it had become so strange. He didn't even need to think to know that something was amiss. One wrong move and he'd be doomed. Along the way, another day passed. Lin was more and more surprised. Could something big have happened to the spirit beasts? Just when Lin could not hold back his curiosity, the ghost's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Wait, don't go any further. Lin quickly stopped and found a hidden corner to hide himself. He looked around and found nothing special, so he could not help but ask in surprise, Senior, what did you find? There are many spirit beasts gathered in front, and their auras are not weak. If you continue to go there, you'll definitely be discovered, the ghost said in a deep voice. Many spirit beasts gathered in front. Lin was shocked. He did not sense them at all, so there should be a long distance to the gathering place of the spirit beasts. Moreover, the ghost said that these spirit beasts were not weak. They must be extremely powerful existences. Many spirit beasts have very unique auras. Even if they consciously hide their auras, they can't completely hide it. You human cultivators can't sense it, but you can't hide it from my senses, the ghostly thing explained. Then what do we do now? Lin asked. Since there were peerlessly powerful spiritual beasts in front of him, a human cultivator like him would be courting death if he went over rashly. However, if he retreated now, it would go against his original intention. After all, he only knew that there were many spiritual beasts gathered together, but he did not know what was going on. For the sake of safety, we can't go any further. The ghost being pondered for a brief moment. It really wanted to know what had happened to the spirit beasts, but it had to ensure Lin Yi's safety first. It could not let Lin Yi take such a huge risk. Therefore, the ghost creature would rather retreat in this situation. In any case, if something were to happen to the spirit beasts, it would not be able to do anything in its current state. All it could do was watch from the sidelines. All right. Since the ghost had said so, Lin naturally wouldn't force it. Even if he wanted to help, he had to first have the strength to do so. At least with his current strength at the peak of the middle stage of Gold Core, it was far from enough to intervene in the affairs of the spirit beasts. After taking a deep breath, Lin immediately carefully restrained his breath and prepared to withdraw. However, at this moment, the ghost creature suddenly shouted softly, "Don't move!" At the same time, a powerful divine sense, like a monstrous, blazing wave, suddenly crossed the top of Lin Yi's head. Lin Yi thought that his strength was not weak, but compared with the owner of this divine sense, he was at most a grain of sand, while the ghost creature was at least a vast and boundless sea of sand. There was no comparison between them. At this moment, Lin Yi's heart was even more horrified than when he faced the Shishan Elder Sect, the evil cultivator of the mountain opening period. It was much more shocking and horrifying. The feeling of having goosebumps all over his body in an instant once again made Lin Yi deeply understand what it meant to be unreachable and daunting. Lin Yi couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. He carefully used divine sense to communicate with the ghost creature in his mind. The ghost creature was silent for a moment. Then it slowly said two words in a very complicated tone. "Je Quebec, Lin." He suddenly became silent. No wonder it was so horrifying. No wonder a random divine sense was more shocking than the Shishan elder sect. It turned out to be the top elder of the Spirit Beast clan. No wonder a single divine sense was so hot and terrifying. Even Lin Yi, who had always been accustomed to using frenzied fire, couldn't bear it. It turned out to be Zhu Kei, the ancestor of playing with fire. Apart from the former king of the spirit beasts, a top-notch elder like the Vermilion Bird was the pinnacle of the Spirit Beast clan. The Spirit Beast clan had always strictly adhered to the law of the jungle. For a top-notch elder to be able to intimidate so many powerful spirit beasts, one could imagine how terrifying his power was. However, Lin Yi immediately thought that the ghost creature living in the space of the jade pendant at the moment was once in existence at the same level as Zhu Quebec naturally. Their strength should not be too different. Although he had long known that the ghost creature was the top elder of the Spirit Beast clan, Lin Yi had no idea how strong the ghost creature was in its heyday. In private, he had made various speculations about the levels of human cultivators. He had guessed the nascent soul stage, the profound ascension stage, and the mountain opening stage. In the secular world, he had ridiculously thought that it was heaven's stage, great perfection, but now he finally experienced it. At the same time, Lin Yi unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, when he first encountered the ghost creature in the secular world, this guy was already in a broken spirit. Otherwise, if it still had 1/10,000th of its strength, he wouldn't even know how he died. After being silent for a long time with lingering fear, Lin Yi finally managed to recover and asked, "Senior, then are we still going?" As the top elder of the Spirit Beast clan, the ghost creature obviously had a friendship with Zhu Quebec. However, whether this friendship was good or bad, enemy or friend, only the ghost creature itself knew. "Are we going or not?" Hearing this, the ghost creature half laughed at itself and half explained, "Let me tell you this, if it was in its heyday in the past, Zhu Kei would have to call me Big Brother. But if we are discovered in this state, it will definitely find a way to make my soul fly away. Of course, you will also be burned to ashes." Chapter 45:21. After all, this was the territory of the spirit beasts, which was also the territory of the Vermilion Bird. It didn't even need to do anything to kill a human cultivator like Lin Yi. Not only would the ghost be of no help, it would also die even faster if it dared to show itself. No, it's too late to retreat now. The Vermilion Bird has already discovered you. The ghost stopped him in a deep voice. Lin Yi was shocked. With his current strength, he would definitely die if he was targeted by the Vermilion Bird. Since you were scanned by its divine sense just now, it's impossible for the Vermilion Bird not to know that you're here. The ghost's words made Lin Yi feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. However, the next sentence made him heave a sigh of relief. But you don't have to be too alarmed. When it scanned you with its divine sense just now, I deliberately disguised a trace of the aura of a spirit beast on your head. So, you should try to hide your own aura as much as possible. In this way, to outsiders, you'll look like a spirit beast in human form. If nothing goes wrong, you should be able to get away with it. Oh, that's not too bad. Lin Yi nodded with lingering fear. He couldn't guarantee anything else, but if it was just about hiding his own aura, if he claimed to be the second strongest in the world, no one could be the first in the world. But don't be too happy too early. Even if the Vermilion Bird didn't notice anything strange just now, it's impossible for you to retreat now. The ghost sighed. Why? Lin Yi's heart tightened again. There's so many spirit beasts gathered in front of us. It's obvious that all the spirit beasts in this area have been gathered there. According to my speculation, the Vermilion Bird is holding a spirit beast conference. In principle, All the spirit beasts in the core area must be present. If you weren't discovered just now, it'd be fine. But if you retreat now, it'd be too suspicious. The ghost smiled bitterly. So I can only brace myself and move forward. Senior, are you sure it'll be okay? He suddenly felt helpless. He knew that the Vermilion Bird was holding a spirit beast conference in front of him, but he still dared to move forward. Wasn't this the same as hanging himself? Was he tired of living? He had always been bold, but he wasn't stupid. He would be crazy if he jumped into the frying pan even though he knew it was dangerous. There should be no problem. The ghostly thing couldn't be too sure. After all, no matter how one looked at it, this matter was very risky. However, it still comforted Lin-Yi. With your ability to conceal your aura and the spirit beast aura that I've disguised on your body, as long as they don't try to distinguish it. Even if you're face to face with the Vermilion Bird, they won't be able to tell anything. All right. Lin-Yi nodded with a bitter smile. He knew what the ghostly thing was trying to say. As long as no one was targeting him, everything would be fine. However, if he was targeted by a spiritual beast expert, especially if the Vermilion Bird noticed that something was amiss, then everything would be over. However, since things had developed to this point, there was no other way out. He could only bite the bullet and do as the ghost said. Kid, you don't have to worry too much. Other than some races with special talents or spirit beasts that don't like human form, many spiritual beasts with a little bit of intelligence can transform into human form. Many spirit beasts with a little bit of intelligence can take on a human form after reaching the heavenly Tao. So even if you go there now, you won't attract too much attention. The ghostly thing continued to comfort him. Don't worry, Senior. Although this is a little dangerous, it's not a big deal. Although it's a little dangerous, I can still take it. He let out a long breath. He was not a person who was afraid of things. Moreover, it was useless to be afraid now that things had come to a head. The more panicked he was, the easier it would be for him to reveal his flaws. Only by dealing with it calmly could he have a chance to get away with it. Well, that's good. However, just to be safe, you'd better wear the 1,000 silk mask. You'd better wear the 1,000 thread mask. That rough martial appearance is more in line with aesthetics of spirit beasts. Most spirit beasts have a similar temperament after transforming into human form. Your current appearance is too delicate, and it's easy to attract attention, the ghostly thing warned again. All right. He nodded, took out the 1,000 silk mask, and put on. At the same time, he complained in his heart about the strange aesthetic of the spiritual beasts he had been cultivating for so long. But this was the first time someone said he looked delicate. Everything was ready. After he calmed his mind and held his breath. He immediately walked forward. The ghost released the aura of a spiritual beast at the right time. This was not the aura of the ghost itself, but it was deliberately disguised. Its strength was only equivalent to that of a spiritual beast at the gold core stage. It was better to be careful. If the ghost directly released its own aura, even if he deliberately suppressed the strength, it would still be very dangerous. Other spiritual beasts might not be able to recognize it for a while, but the old enemy of the Vermilion Bird would definitely be able to detect it in an instant. That would be the real disaster. Along the way, after about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Lin-Yi finally sensed the aura of a large group of powerful spiritual beasts. Judging from their position, they were not far ahead. From a distance, he could hear some strange cheering and jumping sounds. Sometimes there were hoo-hoo-ha, and sometimes there were hoo-hoo. Ordinary people could not understand what this meant, but it sounded very lively. Taking a deep breath, Lin-Yi continued to brace himself and walked forward. After a short while, the original lush, primitive jungle suddenly opened up. As far as the eye could see, there was an extremely empty field. There were no dense shrubs, no giant trees, no swamps or deep pools. It was just a green grassland. As Lin-Yi and the ghost expected, There were indeed many spiritual beasts gathered here. There were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. Many of them had transformed into human forms, and many of them maintained their original forms. All of them were speaking in human language, laughing and cheering. If he had suddenly seen this scene in the secular world, Lin Yi would definitely have cried out involuntarily. This was simply a group of demons dancing. Even though he was already mentally prepared, when he saw so many spiritual beasts at once, and each of them had a strong and extraordinary aura, Lin Yi could not help but be a little dumbfounded. The spiritual beasts he had seen in his life could not even compare to 1% of the spiritual beasts here. At this moment, in the middle of the empty field, there was a group of spiritual beasts in human form, singing and dancing. It seemed that they were performing something. The other spiritual beasts in the field were watching with relish and cheering from time to time. However, in the eyes of Lin Yi, this was simply like a primitive tribe. He really could not see what was so beautiful about that strange dance. Chapter 45:22. I have finally seen the legendary spirit beast clan today. Is this the spiritual beast convention that you mentioned, Senior? Lin Yi secretly asked the ghost. Just a little on the top, said Little Bitch. You can say that. The ghost's breathing became more hurried, and it said in a complicated tone, This can't be considered a complete spiritual beast convention because the spirit beasts from several regions haven't arrived yet. However, the scale of this convention is no small matter. All the spirit beasts nearby have been summoned. It seems that the vermilion bird is really ambitious and is preparing to become the regent. The vermilion bird? Which one is the vermilion bird? Lin Yi looked at the high platform in surprise. Because he wasn't in his original form, he couldn't determine which one it was, even though he knew that the vermilion bird was on the platform. He subconsciously looked at the center of the high platform. At this moment, there was a mysterious man wearing a bamboo hat sitting in that seat. It was unknown what he looked like, nor what kind of spirit beast he was. All he knew was that his bamboo hat was made from a variety of colorful feathers, and he was the most conspicuous person present. Moreover, the person sitting in the center seat was undoubtedly the most important person, and it should be the vermilion bird. After all, according to the logic of most people, even though the vermilion bird was a top-rate elder of the spirit beast clan, it was still a bird at the end of the day, so it was very normal and logical for it to like wearing a body of gorgeous feathers. Not that one. The ghost knew what Lin Yi was thinking and pointed out, the one on the left of the man in the bamboo hat is the vermilion bird. Lin Yi looked again, noticing that in the seats closest to the man in the hat, there were 2 weird-looking old men sitting on the left and right of the man in the hat. The one on the left had a face as red as blood, and his eyebrows were furrowed, giving off an intimidating aura. Although he was just sitting there calmly, his entire body seemed to be shrouded in raging flames, making people not dare to look him in the eye. It felt like they would be burned to ashes if they got too close. Although his appearance was rather strange, the vermilion bird's aura was not too surprising. Nonetheless, the vermilion bird's true appearance and aura were not too surprising. At least, to Lin Yi, it was worthy of its status as a top-notch elder among the spirit beasts. At first glance, one could tell that the vermilion bird was like a god among the clouds and would not be regarded as an ordinary spirit beast. Then, who's that man in the middle and the one on his right? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask curiously. Putting aside the mysterious bamboo hat man, even the old man standing to his right was as strange and eye-catching as the vermilion bird. He had a green face and sharp fangs, and his eyes were a dazzling gold. The terrifying aura he exuded was not much weaker than the vermilion bird's. That mysterious bamboo hat man looks like he's the new spirit beast monarch that the vermilion bird found. I wonder what kind of spirit beast he is, the ghostly thing sighed. In order to search for the bloodline of the spirit beast monarch in the secular world, it had fallen to such a miserable state. It would be a lie to say that it didn't have any doubts about this new spirit beast monarch. After all, the vermilion bird's reputation had never been very good. Furthermore, there were far too many dramas of the vermilion bird using the emperor as a hostage. If it wasn't for his current state, the ghostly thing would definitely go up and personally examine the quality of this new spirit beast monarch. If it discovered that the bloodline was fake, it would be the first to attack the vermilion bird. However, what could it do? The ghostly thing silently paused for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. As for the one on the right, I don't know him either. Could he be a newly promoted elder of the vermilion bird monarch? From the fact that this person was able to stand side by side with the vermilion bird monarch, it was clear that this person's status was extremely high. It was very likely that he was also an elder. However, this ghostly thing had more or less interacted with the elders of the Spirit Beast clan. However, it had never seen such an existence before. This was a completely unfamiliar face. The ghostly thing couldn't help but fall into deep thought from the strange scene today. From the strange scene today, it could already smell something unusual. All the signs indicated that this Spirit Beast clan was no longer the Spirit Beast clan that it was familiar with. The ghostly thing's heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. However, Lin-Yi did not think too much about it. He only quietly blended in with the crowd. Oh no, to be more precise, he should be in the herd of spirit beasts. To him, it did not matter what happened to the Spirit Beast clan as long as his human identity was not discovered. What made Lin-Yi feel rather gratified was that the surrounding powerful spirit beasts had all their attention focused on the high platform and the group of dancing spirit beasts in the middle. From the beginning to the end, none of them had even glanced at him. Even if the spirit beasts next to him had occasionally noticed him, their gazes would only pass for a brief moment. After all, Lin-Yi's body was only emitting the aura of a golden core spirit beast. In the eyes of everyone present, this insignificant level of strength could only be considered as an existence at the bottom. No one would waste their time to pay attention to such a weakling, let alone strike up a conversation with him. If this was any other occasion where killing was allowed, it would make sense for him to be eaten by the spirit beasts as a snack. No matter what, it seemed like the ghostly thing's disguise was a success. If there were no accidents, it should be able to get away with this successfully. Amidst the heaven-shaking cheers, the human-shaped spirit beasts in the middle finally finished their dance and dispersed into the herd of spirit beasts. All of the spirit beasts present then turned their attention to the high platform. That was just the opening dance. The next part of the show was the most important part. As expected, once all of the spirit beasts' attention had been shifted to the high platform, the vermilion bird immediately laughed and took a step forward, leaving the so-called new spirit beast king and the other elders behind. Looking at its high-spirited appearance, those who did not know better would have thought that it was the Spirit Beast King. Very good. I'm very happy to see all of the Spirit Beast brothers from Enluo Cultivation City gathered here to pay respects to our new king. As the vermilion bird spoke, a scorching wave of air enveloped the entire place with every move it made. Not only did it show its overwhelming power, it also made the already enthusiastic atmosphere even more hot-blooded. As soon as the vermilion bird finished speaking, the entire place was filled with cheers. All of the spirit beasts, regardless of whether they were in human or beast forms, knelt on the ground in unison, shouting, "Long live the king!" as they prostrated themselves on the ground. These were all unruly and powerful spirit beasts. If any one of them were to be released, they would probably cause chaos in the South Continent Sea. Lin-Yi initially thought that based on their temperament, even if they would obey the so-called new Spirit Beast King, it would at most be a formality. He did not expect them to be willing to prostrate themselves on the ground. Such a scene of prostrating oneself on the ground was rare even in the strictly ordered human sections. It was evident that the Spirit Beast clan was not as disunited as most people thought. To be continued. Chapter 45:23. They might not be disciplined at all, but they absolutely followed the natural law that the strong ruled. As long as the king of the spiritual beasts and the top-notch elders were powerful enough, the cohesion of the spiritual beasts would not be weaker than that of human cultivators. In fact, they might even be more powerful. This was because, unlike human cultivators who harbored ulterior motives and plotted against each other, these spiritual beasts were much purer by nature. Since they had chosen to obey, they would sincerely obey before they had the power to launch a counterattack. They would not pretend to agree, but oppose in secret. On Luo, Cultivation City, while Lin Yi was pretending, he could not help but mutter in confusion. He asked the ghost thing in private, "Senior, what do you mean?" The South Island is not like the human territory where there are no complicated divisions such as cities and towns. The entire South Island is divided into 5 areas, and the core of each area is a cultivation city. Onlua District is one of the 5 areas, and it's located near the Dark Devil Sea area of the South Island. The ghost thing explained to Lin Yi. I see. Lin Yi suddenly thought of Audiobook Cultivation City in Lufeng Forest. Although it was now abandoned as a relic, it should have been a large area of the South Island before it was abandoned. However, after it was completely abandoned, there were fewer and fewer spiritual beasts. Instead, it gradually became a place for human cultivators to explore. According to the order of the previous king of spiritual beasts, each cultivation city will be guarded by a top-notch elder. Basically, it can be seen as the top-notch elder's sphere of influence. The ghost thing continued. Initially, it did not want to tell Lin Yi about the spiritual beasts. However, this time, it wanted to let Lin Yi know more about the inside story. After all, he was in the South Island now. It had to let Lin Yi know what kind of situation he was in at the very least. So, there are a total of 5 top-notch elders in the spiritual beasts? Lin Yi asked. No, there are always only 4 top-notch elders. The ghost thing paused and explained the other 4 cultivation cities have their own top-notch elders, but Onlua Cultivation City is different. Because of the existence of the 4 Seas Escort Agency, the Dark Devil Sea area has always been the center of the South Island, so it's the same for Onlua Cultivation City. There's no need for any elders here because the king of spiritual beasts is here. Lin Yi nodded. And Luo Cultivation City was personally overseen by the Spirit Beast King, and the 4 top-notch elders could be considered as high-ranking officials, each of them guarding a region for the Spirit Beast King. Such an arrangement could not be said to be simple and crude. Nonetheless, it was in line with the Spirit Beast straightforward style. When the Spirit Beast King isn't around, won't Luo Cultivation City be ownerless? Lin Yi asked. A country can't live without a king, and a city can't live without a master. There was a long period of time between the disappearance of the former king of spirit beasts. As the center of the South Island, Onlua Cultivation City couldn't be in a state of chaos all the time. That won't be the case. Ever since the disappearance of the previous Spirit Beast King, the 4 elders decided to take turns to guard the Spirit Beast King. However, as time went on, everyone began to harbor their own schemes to replace him. In the end, it became more and more intense. Seeing that they were about to fall apart and even kill each other, I proposed to go to the secular world to look for the bloodline of the Spirit Beast King. You know what happened next? The ghost thing sighed. Well, this is actually normal. There will only be so-called loyalty under the deterrence of absolute power. Human cultivators are all like this. Naturally, the spirit beasts are no exception. Lin Yi nodded and sighed. While Lin Yi communicated with the ghost thing secretly, Vermilion Bird looked at all the spirit beasts present who had surrendered. She laughed with satisfaction and said, "Brothers of spirit beasts, the king is still very young now. It's not enough for him to lead the spirit beast clan by himself. As his subordinates, we can't force him. At least, we have to give the king space to grow. Therefore, The king has decided to let me and Elder Azure Dragon work together to manage the affairs. Before the vermilion bird could finish speaking, the strange old man with a green face and long fangs stepped forward and nodded at the spirit beasts present. He was obviously the Elder Azure Dragon that the vermilion bird was referring to. As for the so-called new spirit beast king, he had not made a single sound since the beginning. Everything was being controlled by the vermilion bird. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was a puppet through and through. What, Elder Azure Dragon? Lin Yi did not have much of a reaction. However, after the ghost thing heard this, its already rapid breathing became even more unstable. Lin Yi could clearly sense a monstrous rage from it. Ever since he met the ghost thing, he had never seen it so irritated. "What's wrong, Senior?" Lin Yi quickly asked. "Azure Dragon." "Humph, Azure Dragon, this be Asterisk Start has promoted a new Elder Azure Dragon." The ghost thing gnashed its teeth in anger. If it was at its peak, Lin Yi had no doubt that it would have rushed forward and stepped on the vermilion bird elder. "What do you mean?" Lin Yi was confused. There were a total of 4 top-notch elders. Since there was a vermilion bird elder, then there was also an Azure Dragon elder, right? "Humph, because I am Elder Azure Dragon." The ghost thing roared. "Ah." Lin Yi was shocked speechless. This was the first time he knew the ghost thing's true identity. No wonder it was so agitated and angry. It turned out that this was the original Elder Azure Dragon. It was obvious that the person standing on the stage was the vermilion bird's newly promoted wing. This was actually not difficult to understand. When the ghost thing descended into the secular world as one of the 4 great elders, no one would dare to do anything to it for a short period of time. However, after disappearing for a long time, its position as a top-notch elder naturally became a fat piece of meat in the eyes of others. It was normal for it to be replaced. "Senior, don't be too angry. Since it dared to change the position of the king of spirit beasts, how could it change the position of an elder?" Lin Yi could only comfort it with a wry smile. The ghost thing was silent for a long time. Its rapid breathing gradually calmed down. With a hint of relief and helplessness, it said, "You're right. Hee, I've disappeared for so long, it's normal for a new elder to replace me." It seems that the vermilion bird has indeed taken control of the overall situation of the Spirit Beast clan. It's really not easy. Aren't there other top-notch elders? Are they just going to let the vermilion bird act so presumptuously? Lin Yi asked curiously. There are 5 major cultivation cities on the South Island. The vermilion bird has its own city. This new Elder Azure Dragon has his own city. And this Onlua cultivation city, which nominally belongs to the king of spirit beasts. A total of 3 cities have fallen into the vermilion bird's control. The other 2 elders don't agree with it, so it can't go against them. Moreover, this guy is now in a righteous position. He can use the emperor to order the feudal vassals. To be continued, that you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.